Okay. Everything is looking good, and it's looking like we are live streaming to the world. All right, let me shut down this one window and let's get started. How is everyone doing out there today, this afternoon, or this morning, or evening, wherever you are? Welcome to Duran Live 54. I have with me in Moscow the host of RT's Crosstalk, Mr. Peter Lavelle. Peter, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm very, I swear I brought the weather from London here because it's really, really gray. I think winter is over. It is the mildest winter we've ever had. We had essentially this much snow this whole year in Moscow. This much, if that. So winter's over. Everyone's bewildered. And also, again, I apologize to everyone profusely. There are people finishing their apartments in my building. And so Mr. Drill might appear at any second. And there's nothing I can do about it, okay? He seems to have calmed down. I keep thinking about how annoying it must be to drill because it's really annoying to hear it. Okay, but this guy's determined. So again, my apologies, nothing I can do about it.
All right. And we have in London, the Oracle of London, Mr. Alexander Mercouris. Alexander, how are you?
Recovered from a bad cold, which I'm told by our magnificent NHS was not the coronavirus, but I had it badly on Sunday and yesterday. And on Monday, and today I'm myself again. But seriously, the coronavirus thing, which we'll be talking about later in the program, has got London in its grip. I don't mean to say that we are, masses of infections.
Well, grip is a Russian word for flu, so be careful.
I know. Well, French also, I should say.
And Greek.
And Greek, exactly.
Who knew?
But I have already noticed the first telltale signs of panic shopping. People, food shops are running low. Something that never happened.
There's none of that here.
No, I know. No. Interesting. I would point out that we never had panic buying on the run up to Brexit at any time. So that perhaps gives some people an idea of what priorities people have.
All right, let's see where people are joining us from real quick as we wait for more people to join us on this live stream. Let's see, Lok, Baldur's Bane, hi there. Project Masculinity in self-quarantine. Right. Marianne, hello from Netherlands. Let's see, where else? From Antwerpen. Let's see, Canada, 97 cases in Canada. South Mexifornia. Let's see, Sasha Duran gets an orgasm when they hear the name Putin. We're going to talk about Putin and the term limits, orgasm free.
Absolutely.
So
weird.
Yeah, weird. All right. From the Netherlands, from Slovenia, Lechat, how are you? From Copenhagen. Let's see, Derbyshire, Netherlands, Memphis. All right, Memphis, Milwaukee, New Mexico, Missouri. Valies, hello, Valies from Ulster. Helen Farrington, how are you, Helen? Let's see, Tony G, no panic in Ukraine. Does Ukraine have any cases?
They have other panics, believe me.
Okay. Bitcoin Alin from Holland. From hi lads from wet Dublin. Raining in Dublin. All right. Kentucky, Scotland, Thailand, Malaysia, Istanbul, India. Where else? South America, Colombia. Awesome. From Panama, Ottawa, Pennsylvania, Raleigh-ville. Let's see, Florida. Boy, Bernie's going to lose bad in Florida. He is going to get clobbered. Topeka, Belgium, Pennsylvania, Mykonos. Awesome. From Maine, from Oklahoma, South Arkansas. All right. Great. From Boston, Scotland, Tennessee, and Oregon and California. And let's get rolling. Bangkok, Nigeria, Hawaii, Prague, and Croatia. Okay. Peter, let's kick it off with the latest breaking news out of the US. Biden won 4 states. Washington is still being tallied up. It's neck and neck. He clobbered Bernie in Mississippi, clobbered him with like 80%. and he took the big prize, which was Michigan. What do you make of what happened yesterday?
It's over. Okay, it's over. Bernie now. Now it's about Bernie. It's not about his support anymore. Bernie can go to the convention and help craft the rules, but that's a sad second place. Bernie, and I'm a conservative, so I'm just kind of looking at this subjectively here. Okay, he never had any fire in his belly. That's his fault. I mean, he's pushing a revolution, but he refuses to be a revolutionary. And I think that, now it's going to be about his supporters. And I didn't get to finish it because watching Joe Biden is really painful. But he was making a speech after Michigan, and the title of the video was he is reaching out to Sanders voters. Well, good luck, Joe. It's not going to work. Okay, you're the problem, Joe. That's why Bernie ran. Okay, you're not going to get their support. You're not. And Joe Biden is going to this candidacy, and the donor class, let's underline donor class, because that's what it's all about. That's why Joe is where he is. It's the donors did it. It was the media that did it. Because what they've done is, and I don't want to dismiss anybody that voted for Joe Biden. I don't want to dismiss that at all. But what the media did was craft a message of inevitability, and believe it or not, electability. Now, inevitability, yes, I can get that. You can frame a story that way. Electability, I think that's really hard, and we're going to see during the next debates. So you see, Bernie will stay in just to maybe for a change he'll relish something and watch Joe on his own without any training wheels and without his daycare help get through a debate. You've got to remember all of the debates Joe performed in, he did poorly, but he only had to speak, 90 seconds, 120 seconds, okay? Now it's one-on-one, okay? Joe should have begged to have Tulsi Gabbard on that stage. They should have begged the DNC. So he would have time to, get his faculties, get his marbles together, because they're certainly not there. And I don't say that, with any kind of glee. One little small thing about my childhood, my mother worked in a convalescent hospital, obviously with people very late in their life. It was basically a time, a place to go to end your life with hospice care. And I came across a lot of elderly people, and it's so painful. There's nothing funny about it. It's really sad. And I have compassion for that. But, you just have to wonder, if this is the best they can do. The Democratic Party really has damaged itself. It will continue to really damage itself. And this is a critical juncture where I think that, we're going to see people that supported Bernie, to some extent Elizabeth Warren, but she ended up being such a fraud on every single level. It's amazing the fraud that she tried to, or did commit on the electorate and in the media. So I take no great pleasure in seeing what happened to Bernie, but Bernie has himself to blame. My friend Joe. Well, Joe is a crook, okay? He is the representative of the credit card industry. He's a representative of endless wars. There's corruption surrounding him, left, right, and center, okay? Good old Joe, with his aviator glasses and all of that. What a fraud this is. Democrats are making a huge mistake. And I'll tell you, at one point, they're going to have buyer's remorse. But Bernie, you screwed up. It's your fault, and you got to own it.
Alexander, Biden. The being, old doesn't bother me so much. What bothers me a lot is the corruption of Biden.
Well, absolutely.
I mean, there's no difference. I don't see a difference of what Biden has done to, say, the Clinton Foundation. I mean, it's the same kind of grift, isn't it? The same corruption. Foreign dignitaries, countries, regime change, take the money, put it in your pocket, distribute it to your family members, whether it's Hunter or Chelsea. It seems like it's all the same.
Well, I completely agree. I would add, obviously, Biden for a long time. I mean, I think he was the senator for Delaware. He's obviously had connections with the financial services industries for a long, long time. And yes, I think that's entirely right. I think this is one of the extraordinary and very sad things about the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party of Franklin Roosevelt, which was the party of the working people of America, has now become the party of the oligarchy, of the oligarchical wealthy people.
And the very poor.
And the very poor.
And the very poor.
Well, it's also a patronage machine.
Yep.
Which buys votes from certain blocks of the electorate by basically doling out favors to them and by playing on their identities in certain ways. But one of the aspects of this oligarchy is that, of course, it also sees itself as entitled to the benefits of what you might call empire. And that's what Hillary Clinton was up to with the foundation when she was getting money in from various people around the world, including, I believe, various Ukrainian oligarchs. And it seems to me that Joe Biden has exactly the same attitude. And we saw that, we've seen that in the Ukraine Gate scandal, which is really the Biden Gate scandal, even though people managed to reverse that with his son being, parachuted into a big Ukrainian company and paid huge amounts of money for doing absolutely nothing at the very same time that Joe Biden was in fact running Ukraine. I would say two things. Firstly, I agree. I mean, normally age is not an issue for me. I am not a doctor. I'm not going to try and analyze Biden's state of health. But if he does have early problems of, memory and recollection, that is an issue, and I think we need to have that cleared up. But that's all I'm going to say about that, because I don't want to dwell on it. The second thing I get to say, following from what Peter said about Bernie being the nice revolutionary, a contradiction in terms. This is now the last and final test for him. Bernie's not going to be the Democratic Party's nominee for president. But if he throws in the towel now, if he doesn't continue his campaign, then he is throwing away the whole program that he has, the whole project of somehow planting these ideas that he has into the subsoil of America. What he now needs to do is he needs to go to that debate on Sunday. He needs to take on Biden. He needs to go on fighting all the way to the convention. He's not there now, it seems to me, to go on doing backroom deals with the DNC. He's got to keep fighting. He can't win, but if he wants to pull America to the left, that's what he should do. I don't believe he's going to do it. I followed this. I followed Bernie both in 2016 and in 2020. I don't get the sense that he's up to that. I think we'll have the debate on Sunday. I don't think he's going to shine because I think he feels defeated. That's my sense of it. And I think sooner or later he's going to pull out. And he's going to disappoint everybody.
Oh, well, he'll go all the way to the convention. I have no doubt about that. Okay. But, if I could just talk about his campaign a little bit. And it's not so much, I think, if you look at poll after poll, a great deal of the American electorate is quite progressive, nominally speaking. Yeah. And there's nothing really particularly radical about Bernie Sanders, which I can hate how Fox News treats him and how many people at MSNBC and CNN treat him too. He is not the radical. He's talking about ideas that have been practiced all around the world with relative success, okay, in Europe, okay? They just pinned the Venezuela thing on him or something like that. Now, this is just hyperbole, it's nonsense, and it's not fair, okay? But the mistake that Bernie made with these progressive ideas, he didn't tell an American story. No. And I think that's why so many people couldn't really, connect, because he's an ideas guy. He's an ideas wonky guy. He really is. He's a smart guy, but he couldn't tell it as an American story that people could relate to. He could have very easily taken the mantle of FDR and try to tell that story. And FDR wasn't particularly a great president. It was actually a pretty mediocre one. but he inspired generations of people and got people in the process. See, Bernie got everybody in the process, but he didn't know how to tell the right story. And I really fault him for that. I've always made it be clear, if you canceling student debt, I'm interested in the conversation. Universal healthcare, I'm interested in the conversation, okay? I'm not stopping just because I hear that. I want to know what you mean, okay? How are you going to do it? And this is what his detractors in the DNC, and of course, a lot of conservatives, they just don't want to hear it. I want to hear ideas and how they will work. But Bernie never told it as an American story. And you know what? The moving and shaking of American politics from the, I would say, since the Civil War, is big progressive ideas in how you graft it onto the American experience. See, Bernie wasn't trying to graft. Another thing is he didn't really reach out to people. He was kind of like, like get off the grass type guy, He didn't look for affirmation. He didn't look for endorsements until it was too late. Jesse Jackson came in. Where was Jesse Jackson a year ago?
Yeah.
He really would have needed Jesse Jackson a year ago. See, and a lot of Bernie bros, and I don't use that in a disparaging way. Actually, I like the term Bernie bros. It was the same thing, is that, we're right, we know what we want, and there's a lot of us, but they didn't think of the broad church, and that's how you win elections, okay? And Joe Biden's gonna find that out the hard way. I mean, the real hard way. I don't know. I mean, Elizabeth Warren, after Michigan, it doesn't matter what she thinks. Nobody cares what Elizabeth Warren says anymore. She lost her moment. She lost her window, okay? And Joe why would Joe pick her? She didn't win one primary. She got third place in her own state. What does she bring to the table? Oh, she's a woman. Maybe that's it. But then she tokenizes herself that way. What the irony of ironies, okay? So Bernie didn't tell an American story. And I think that was one of his great failings, okay? Smart guy, determined guy. But like I said, he wants a revolution, quote unquote, without being a revolutionary. It doesn't work.
Alexander and Peter, I'd like your thoughts on this too. What do you make of the fact that Bernie supported Hillary Clinton in 2016, and now it looks like he will support Joe Biden? I expect him to campaign and support Joe Biden,
but I don't think his supporters will.
Right, but him, I think he'll endorse Joe Biden. I think he's actually even hinted at the fact that he will, and he'll fall in line and support Biden as he ramps up his campaign for president against Trump. But what do you make of the fact that Bernie supported Clinton, campaigned for her, fell in line and just really talked her up, knowing who Hillary Clinton was? Yeah. What does that tell you about Bernie Clinton? As he positions himself as a man of integrity, and like Peter said, and everyone here, he's a revolutionary, and he's honest and he runs on his record. But I could never get over in 2016, how could you support Hillary? How could you support
36, 37 appearances?
37, yeah. How do you do that? I mean, that's always kind of puzzled me.
Well, it proves that he's not the revolutionary he pretends to be. And I think that he damaged fatally and permanently his image with the more radical part of the electoral base that was voting for him in 2016. And they have never really forgotten it, and they've never really got over it. And it's one of the key reasons why he's not doing as well this time in 2020 as he did in 2016, because people ultimately remember that when it came to it, he went with the corrupt establishment.
Yep.
So now, you can, again, I'm not a psychologist. I'm not able to get into Bernie's mind. I don't know what he thinks of Hillary Clinton. I don't know whether he was swayed into thinking that Donald Trump really was this monster that he had to fight.
But Alexander, actions speak louder than words.
Well, they do.
What he thinks is one thing. What he did, though.
Well, I said he's not a revolutionary. A true revolutionary doesn't do that sort of thing. The fact that he went along and supported Hillary Clinton in 2016 means that he would not be the transformative president if he was elected. If he had become president, he won't become president now, but if he had become president, he would not have been able to, defeat the deep state or the swamp, carry out all these huge reforms that he says, extend Medicare, abolish student debt. He wouldn't have been able to do any of those things. And his base senses it. And that's why they don't support him. My guess is, by the way, that the point about Bernie, he's been in politics a long, long time. He's become very comfortable with being senator for Vermont. That's to some extent diluted his radicalism. And of course, he yearns, as so many of these people do, to be accepted. He wants to be friends with everybody. He wants to be part of this establishment, this, the Senate, with, enjoy all the sort of friendships. If you're a revolutionary, that just doesn't work.
Well, what he should have done, he should have torn a page from Trump in 2016 and say, I'm going to burn this place down. I'm going to burn it down. And I got real support. I have grassroots. I don't have CNN. I don't have MSNBC, but I have the power of the people. Okay. And that's why he's weak in character. He should have said, I'm going to burn this place down. Just watch. And you know who would have blinked? They would have. Yeah. But no. Alexander McKeris is right. He just wants everybody to be friends. I'm sorry, Bernie. This is politics. It's a blood sport.
Yes.
And you know who plays it really well? Trump and Clinton. Hillary. Oh, well, she's a snake in the grass. Okay. Yes. She still is, for goodness sake. No coincidence. Hulu's running this now. Biden screws up. They've got her in the wings. And she's top of mind again. She's always on top of mind for people. This is very strategic. Very strategic. They're holding out just in case.
And I think, Peter, you're completely right. And it reminded me so much of so many of the mistakes the Labour Party made here in Britain.
I was thinking the same thing. Yeah.
This idea that you're going to present this great raft of policies and you're going to say to everybody, these are policies, these are right. You come and agree with us, as opposed to going out and reaching out to people. Politics doesn't work like that. You have to sort of build bridges, to build coalitions, to do all of those things. You talked about FDR. FDR, whatever else he was brilliant at building coalitions. He was very skillful at doing those sort of things. So, by the way, going back in time was Lincoln. If you read about Lincoln, he was very skillful in doing those sort of things. Bernie isn't. Bernie doesn't know how to draw people in the way that a real, successful politician who wants to carry out transformative change does.
Yeah, but the thing is, you can't get into the mind of a whole organization, okay? Yeah. But I mean, look at the disparity between Bernie and all of the Bernie bros I know. I mean, they're the ones that are saying he's got to put the gloves on and he's got to start batting Biden away. I mean, it's just, there's so much there to hit and he won't do it. And that's a lot of frustration.
So much to hit.
So, oh my God. I mean,
so much to hit.
Well, you heard exactly the same, by the way, during the election we had in Britain with, people yearning to see Jeremy Corbyn come along and going after Boris Johnson, who's many vulnerabilities.
I thought, Jeremy Corbyn, head of the Labour Party, was he just sedated the entire time? Because he was on RT a lot, okay? And wow, and I remember one, I don't know, maybe it was like a music festival or something, like when they were having the voting for the leader of the Labour Party. He was treated like a rock star.
Absolutely.
I mean, he had the energy behind him, but once he got the job, it's like he disappeared.
Well, because he was unsuited to it, just as Bernie ultimately is not a revolutionary. Neither was Corbyn. Both are very nice people. Very nice people, very polite people. I mean, I've never met either of them. I've never met Corbyn, but I know a lot of people who know Corbyn, and they all tell me the same thing. He's an extremely nice person, very polite. He doesn't like to be combative. Unfortunately, in politics, you have to be sometimes. You have to be a lot of the time. And the other thing I would say, and it's, again, both Corbyn and Bernie suffer from this. They don't have wit and humor and the ability to, turn things round, to, come up with a clever repartee, to take someone's advantage of. They're very flat-footed in elections. And I have to say, I mean, Trump supremely is not. He is extremely skilled at that kind of, quick, fiery, sharp thing.
Yeah, but I want to go back to something you said. I'm gonna have to push back, and I'm not gonna let you off the hook. Look, compare Joe Biden and compare him to Donald Trump. Now, Donald Trump has been in office almost 4 years. Now, he hasn't slowed down at all. He's just as quick-witted as usual. Remarkably, he doesn't seem to age, which, that's kind of odd sitting in the White House. Look what happened to George W. Bush, Jimmy Carter. Even Barack Obama, he left with white hair. Okay. But Trump seems to just be, he doesn't seem to change at all. All right. And what I'm saying is that if you go back to 2016, his speech patterns and his reaction time, his wit is the same, okay, remarkably so. But with someone like Joe, it is visibly deteriorated, okay, and that is something that's fair game to comment on. Okay? I'm not being a doctor. I'm just seeing I'm just commenting what I'm seeing.
Exactly.
I'm terrified of that. Okay. Yes. So I think I'm not a doctor and I'm not making a diagnosis or anything like that, but it appears to a layman like myself watching videos of him, he doesn't have all his marbles. Okay.
Well, I agree. I mean, this is the point. It's not age exactly. I've met lots of very dynamic people who are the same age as Joe Biden. It is that there does seem to be a marked slowing down, and I'm being extremely polite about this. Extremely polite. More about
nobody wants to be cruel. Okay,
nobody wants to be cruel, exactly. And in fact, this is if some of the things people are saying about Joe Biden are true, then it is a cruelty what is being done to him.
That's what I call today's program, elder abuse.
Yeah.
All right, Peter, let's wrap it up on this, and I want to ask you about Tulsi. Now, all the media is saying that there's no woman in the race. Now you're going to have two old white guys, and there's no woman, and oh my God, once again, we don't have a female running for president. And Tulsi was on Tucker Carlson. And the first thing she did is she raised her hand and she says, "Look, everybody, I'm right here." Now, number one is what do you make of that? Of how the media is just disappearing Tulsi, which is terrible.
And
number two, do you think this points to the fact that they may try to shoehorn Hillary Clinton in once they realize that Biden just doesn't have what it takes to make it all the way to November? That they might say, "Okay, now we finally got our woman. Here she is."
It's an interesting idea, but I don't look at Hillary Clinton. I think of her as basically being evil and not being a woman. I mean, I have this discussion all the time with lefties. I said, and I say this with complete sincerity, I have nothing against a woman becoming president of the United States. I mean, I'm a boomer, okay? We got used to that kind of stuff a long time ago. I mean, really. I just don't want that woman president, Hillary Clinton, okay? That's how I feel. Tulsi Gabbard, at the terrible treatment of her, and she's still standing and she's still there. I love that. Okay. She is more presidential than the lot. Okay. The way she speaks with authority, with calmness, direction, and she pushes back when something she hears is wrong. Very interesting personality, okay? And I feel confident about her. She exudes confidence, okay? And she'll go to those third rails that, don't do that, Tulsi. And she said, nope, that's what I am. I'm this way, okay? I have a lot of admiration for her. But, they'll shoehorn Hillary in, not because she's a woman. They're just going to shoehorn because everybody's waiting to get back to 2015. Yeah, the gravy train is back. Because Joe wants to do the same thing for them, okay? You got to look at it, you guys. It's like this gig flow, okay? They want that to come back. Now, part of me strongly believes that they're going to like let Joe have the nomination because nobody's going to beat Trump. So let Joe take it down. These people, these swamp characters, they're perfectly comfortable in opposition. They really are. Actually, they've thrived. Okay, the resistance is a business. Okay, so I mean, if they lose, Joe goes down. Okay, their gig flow remains. Okay, and so for me, I don't think the Democratic Party has fire in their belly for this presidential election. They do for the House, they do for the Senate. But at the top of the ticket, I think there's a great deal of ambivalence, really a great deal of ambivalence, because they just picking this guy. I mean, everybody knows, anybody that knows anything about politics knows that Joe's a pretty dirty character.
They're very dirty, right, Alexander? We've
discussed
over many videos. His brother's in trouble too now.
I believe
his brother's
so, yeah.
under.
It's difficult to keep up.
Watchful eyes now.
Well, indeed, it's difficult to keep up with it all. But if people want to go back and watch our various programs in which we've unpacked what was going on in Ukraine, whilst Joe Biden was Obama's vice president, and what role he had. Chairing cabinet meetings in Kiev, chairing parliamentary meetings in Kiev, apparently taking the decision, along with other people, to launch the military offensive in the Donbass, and at the same time, as we've discovered, picking and sacking government ministers and attorney generals, at the same time as his son is in a very, very comfortable position. And of course, we've discussed on our programs this concept that exists in this part of the world of krisha, of how you make payments to people in return.
It means roof. It means roof.
Roof, exactly. Peter knows much more about it than I do, but the point is that it's a form of protection. You buy protection. And in Ukraine, the whole system works around that. And we've seen how Ukrainian politicians have actually said that that was what the whole Biden-Burisma arrangement ultimately was from their point of view. So, lots going on with Biden. And again, it's appalling that Bernie has never really, pursued it. This was made for him. He should have been out there asking the questions, but he didn't want to ask the questions because he didn't want to appear like he was siding with Trump.
Yeah. You know what this is kind of like? It's kind of like the OJ trial. Everybody knew OJ was guilty, but all the handlers, they just gaslit everybody and he got away with it. Okay. And that's exactly what's happening right now. They're gonna gaslight or cover up, disappear all of Joe's issues, which Trump won't do that. He's got a, oh man. The Trump campaign, they've got a whiteboard with tiny print. They got a lot of material to work with, a lot of material. Mm-hmm. With Bernie, no. Bernie's a pretty clean guy. I've listened to some podcasts that he did lose, had some pay to play, but nothing on this level. Okay, mm-hmm. Again, it was involving his family. But that was one source, okay. But Joe, it's in broad daylight, and everybody in Washington knows it, okay. Joe just knows how to do it well, okay.
Well, he was 37 years in the Senate, senator for Delaware. He's got massive experience, and he was a corporate lawyer beforehand, so he knows exactly how to do it. So it's not surprising. He comes with that kind of background. He is the extreme establishment insider.
Yeah.
Yes, he is. All right. I forgot to mention as we started the live stream that we have now a join button, everybody. For $1.99 USD, you join. You get 5% discount on Duran Shop. You get like a cool button when you comment. Your name is highlighted in green. So check that out. We already have a couple of people who have already joined as well. It's different than Patreon and Subscribestar. It's a whole different subscription. And we give you some perks, and we'll be adding more perks. So you'll see that join button. Please join, help out the channel. Alexander, MBS, Russia, shale. What's going on there? What is this all about? Because I've heard so many theories, and I know you've got your views on it as well.
Yes.
I've heard Putin is going after U.S. shale. I heard it's Russia's revenge against the U.S. regime change. I've heard MBS is going after Russia. I've heard MBS is going after Russia and the U.S. What's going on here?
Right. First of all, let's kill this theory that the Russians are going after, or were going after, U.S. shale. What happened was last week, MBS, the Saudis, and OPEC came along and said to the Russians, we're going to cut oil production by 1.5 million barrels a day, which is a huge cut. And we want you to join us in that by matching that cut on similar vast scale. And this is an ultimatum and you've got to do it. And what the Russians said was, there's no sense in our doing this. We don't know why we should do this. And why should we do something when the only people, all that's going to happen in that case is that the shale producers will step up production. That's what the Russians said. They're not out to destroy the shale producers.
No. Yeah, but it's the other way around. It's the Saudis that want to destroy you. It's not the Russians.
Exactly.
The media is just, their hair is on fire.
On fire.
My God.
Yeah.
And plus those markets don't affect Russia at all, okay? Not at all. They have nothing in common. I don't know what these people in the media are talking about. You know, they don't want to talk about the angle, our Saudi ally is doing this, okay? Yeah. We give them all this help. We give them cover in Yemen. And now the Saudis turn around and stick in the knife and twist it. They won't tell you that because it's an uncomfortable truth. Russia they tried to ensnarl Russia into this to make Russia play that game, and the Russians say, no, you're at risk. We're not.
But exactly.
You want to go down this path? Yeah. Saudi Arabia has the cheapest lifting costs of oil in the world. Okay. It's just in the sand and you pick it up. Okay. But they have the highest correlation to their budget. So if they're going to flood the market like they are, and they can do it extensively, they have vast reserves all around the world that they can release into the market, and fine, the price is going to go down. But it's going to be a game of chicken. And if the Saudis think that they can outweight the Russians, you got to think twice about it. Russia's lifting costs are much more expensive, but they have designed ever since 2008 a series of different benchmarks for the budget. So if the price of oil is here or here or here, they know exactly what to do. It's almost like a spreadsheet. You put in the price and you hit enter, and it tells you exactly what you want. They've been planning for this for what 15 years? Okay, yes. They've been planning for it for a very long time. So I mean, the Saudis. Oh my God, this. Everything this guy touches goes south, okay? So everyone listen up. This is not the Russians going after American energy, though American government goes after Russian
absolutely
gas. It's with a vengeance, Nord Stream, for example. But the Russians had nothing to do with this. The Saudis thought they could get them on board. The Russians said, we have nothing to do with this. And so you do it at your peril. And I mean this very seriously, the peril of the entire house of Saud, okay? Yeah. Russia can ride this through. They've got reserves, and like I said, they have it all budgetary planned out. Will they have to tighten their belt on some things? Of course, yes. Of course. Okay, but fine. And they learned a lot of lessons from 2008. I don't think anybody in Saudi Arabia has learned anything.
No. Well, I mean, this is exactly. I mean, it's not the Russians who've launched the oil war. It's the Saudis. No. It's the Saudis. It's the Saudis who are turning around. They want a 1.5 million barrel a day production cut on Friday, and on Sunday they're going to flood the world with oil, increasing their production from 8 million to 12 million. And they're also going to pump out, sell another 300,000 barrels on top of that. And oil they've squirreled away. I mean, it's a wild oscillation.
And you have a flat global economy. Who thought about this in Riyadh? Okay, well, exactly. There's no demand.
There's no demand. Exactly. So of course, production is collapsing. But as I say, if anybody is going after the shale producers, it's not Vladimir Putin. It's MBS. Now, whether this is going to do him any good or not is an entirely different matter. I would say no. I'm going to make a prediction. I think the shale producers will come through, not perhaps intact. Many of them will go bankrupt. I think American shale is here to stay. And I think that's my prediction. I mean, I'm not an oil economist. I've seen some of the numbers that are floating around, but I think you'll see consolidations and takeovers and people ahead. The US is a big, flexible economy, can absorb this. Russia is a big, diversified economy, different from the US, smaller than the US, but it's still a real country. Saudi Arabia isn't a real country. It really is a family, exactly. And what is MBS doing?
I could also put an adjective in front of family, but I think you get my point. Okay.
Yeah, but exactly. I mean, he's putting all their assets, and he's spinning the roulette wheel.
And you know what they did? Look at Aramco's shares. Oh my God, they went south. Okay.
Absolutely.
Good job. Cool. Good job. I mean, everything this guy touches. Oh,
yeah.
Meanwhile, the interesting thing is where do we go from here?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of different estimates out there. There's some people say this spat will probably be resolved within 3 months. There are other people say this could be really dragged out. Now, you know, the Saudi budget, I mean, we always have this kind of perception of just endless money and luxury and all that. Now, you know, MBS has put out a lot of these mega projects, okay, and they are super expensive. And because of the political volatility in the kingdom, a lot of people are saying, well, I'm going to stay away from this. You know, we don't. I mean, they don't say it publicly in front of the Saudis, but you know, it's not a good investment bet. So people are not going to be investing in these projects here. He has to self-fund it. I mean, he has to shake down his own family. You know, extended family to get money for the budget. I mean, this is a very perilous stratagem. I mean, when I was first read it, I was just absolutely floored. It's like, what is this, a novel? Is this an crude novel? Because I don't see how it's going to work. The Russians were fully prepared for this, all right? And it hasn't made it, with the exception of the ruble taking a walloping, I mean, a real walloping. Outside of that, they're going to just got to have to go roll with the punches here. And it's the Saudis that have initiated this. The Russians didn't do it, and everybody's going to have to see what the reaction is. Considering the temperament of MBS and his decision making, I have to wonder if that's the reason for the purge that he did against his close family members days before that. Okay, because you know, if they know anything in Saudi Arabia, they know something about oil. And I think there are going to be people saying, what in the world are you doing? And we're already in a precarious situation. You know, the Aramco IPO was a sad affair, a very sad affair, which we predicted it would be. And this seems like this is a cascade of really bad decisions. So, and on top of it, we have the coronavirus, okay? I mean, you have global demand is flat for everything right now. I mean, really flat. And this is weird timing. My goodness, okay? There's something going in, internal dynamics going inside the kingdom. I think is driving this.
Well, I think that's right. I mean, I think that the situation, all the signs are that there is an incipient political crisis in Saudi Arabia. And yes, this does look to me a bit, very much, I have to say, like a teenage tantrum by MBS. He can't get what he wants, so he smashes the furniture in order to get
because he gets everything he wants at home.
I don't know.
Okay, because and I think that's why.
Yeah, but and you know, to attract the attention of the adults, like like sort of sport teenagers do. But I think also, and this is where we have these arrests that happened in Riyadh of prominent Saudi princes. I do get the sense that there's also an awful lot of uncertainty about the underlying political situation. And of course, this is going to make it worse because more and more people in Saudi Arabia are going to be saying to themselves, what is going on? Who is this person? What is he doing? I mean, he's arresting people one day, charging them with treason the next. He is, as I said, betting everything on the roulette wheel of the oil market. When a whole point about Saudi Arabia has been to keep oil prices stable. We've got a war in Yemen, which is not going well. We've had an attack on our Aramco facilities. The Aramco IPO was a flop. I mean, there must be accumulating worries amongst lots of people in Saudi Arabia, within the royal family and within the various extended branches of the other important families that make up the ruling elite there about what he's doing. So I think that there is an element of a tantrum of this. There's also very strong signs of great insecurity, and I suspect even a slight measure of desperation, perhaps.
Yeah.
Peter, is MBS on borrowed time? Is he toast? Is he going to be regime changed? Because the guy just doesn't seem very bright. I mean, at all.
The thing is, we do know that the American deep state was not pleased that he was able to convince his father to become the king in waiting. They preferred other candidates. But you always, the thing is that, you know, what I worry about is that, you know, when I think of the foreign policy and defense and intelligence elites in the United States, when have they ever gotten anything right recently? Okay. And so we don't need instability in Saudi Arabia. I have no appreciation of the Saudi royal family and their ideology, Wahhabism. I think it's very dangerous for the world. But you don't want a country like that to go up in political flames, because there are too many unintended consequences as a result. Okay, so I think that it's going to be resolved internally, and I don't think his future is bright. Everything he touches, you know, kidnapping the prime minister of Lebanon, you know, I mean, this is weird stuff. Yeah. A war in Yemen, where one of the richest countries per capita, and even just by dollars, you know, fighting one of the poorest countries in the world, and they can't win. And that country lobs a few missiles at your Aramco operations, and you know, the whole world is like, oh my God, look how fragile this place is. I mean, because of the special relationship that the United States has with Saudi Arabia, you never hear anything about it in the media. I've said before in my own program, in the mainstream media, don't say much about Israel, and they say nothing about Saudi Arabia. Okay, and that's why you're not. Yemen captured the imagination of some people. Okay, but other things are just not reported, and it's no wonder. You know, blame the Russians for what some the Saudis do. That's just typical Western media. Okay, it's just remarkable to me. That's their. I met a friend of mine for lunch, and he's a good guy and he's a smart guy, but he's not into politics like the we are. He said, "Why is Russia doing this to America?" I said, "What?" And I explained to him what was going on, and he seemed, yeah, that seems plausible. But I said, where'd you get this? He said, the New York Times. Well, of course, the New York Times. We got to keep our eye on Saudi Arabia, a very volatile place.
Absolutely. I mean, I would add, just to get to the United States. So here we have Prince MBS. He invites Donald Trump. The very first trip Donald Trump makes as president is to Saudi Arabia. He goes, MBS throws a huge show, spends $70 million on the reception. You know, flatters Donald Trump. And now what is he doing? He's attacking the US shale oil industry right in the middle of Donald Trump's election campaign. Is that going to make Donald Trump happy? Is Donald Trump going to be happy with MBS at the moment? Of course not. I mean,
but he's got Corona. Now he has the oil prices from his good friend.
Very good friend. I mean, and Peter's absolutely right. The person the US wanted, and this is, I think, fairly well known, wanted as the new king of Saudi Arabia was Prince Nayef. So he goes off and arrests Prince Nayef, charges Prince Nayef with treason. And of course, and I read it in a few places in the Middle East media, he's actually accusing Prince Nayef of treason with the Americans. I mean, it's...
Can't make this stuff up.
It's absolutely. I mean,
he's toast.
It's just crazy. I mean, and one wonders how long this is going to go on for. I mean, his father, who's the king, is protecting him at the moment. But you know, when his father's gone, I think there's going to be real resistance within Saudi Arabia to him actually taking over from his father, and that's where I think you could start to see a really major crisis blowing up.
You know, an interesting tidbit about MBS. Unlike his brothers and other members of his extended family, the young men, almost to the man, were sent to the UK, US to be educated and have their fun, do their shopping, their yachts and planes and all of that, what they're famed for. But MBS didn't do that because his father was mayor of Riyadh. And that's a very interesting position that his father had. You know why? Because he knows everyone's books, everyone's money. And MBS took over that for him. So he knows all of the secrets, all of the dirty money, all the dirty stuff. And that's his leverage. He has huge knowledge, in-depth knowledge of all members of the royal family. And he obviously uses it. Now, accusing them of corruption, yeah, probably true. Okay, big time, all right? But you politicizing it is something different. His father didn't do that, maybe on occasion to get somebody in line. But that's a very interesting leverage that he has. He knows the secrets of the kingdom, and he's using it for his political advancement and destroying the kingdom in the process. I really, wouldn't you love to be a barfly in the CIA? They're just doing like, what is he doing to us? I mean, it's got to be, you know, that's when you start binging popcorn.
All right, Alexander, you mentioned it. MBS decided to do all this crazy stuff with oil and the oil prices during this whole coronavirus stuff that's going on. It's ramping up all over Europe. Italy's hit really hard. The UK is actually ramping up as well, from what I understand.
Absolutely.
Alexander, how much of what we're seeing in the markets is due to MBS? How much is due to coronavirus? And what's your outlook for
Well, I think the coronavirus has been a major and growing problem. Now, you know, I want to make it clear. I mean, I'm not talking about, you know, to what extent it's a medical emergency. I'm not a doctor, as I've said many times. I'm hearing different things from different people. It seems increasingly that this is a major and very serious health crisis. But if people want to argue otherwise, that's up to them. But governments and people are reacting, you know, radically, and that is affecting the way the world economy is going to function. If you lock down the whole of Italy, that is going to have an effect on the world economy. If you lock down the whole of China, that's going to have an even bigger effect on the world economy. If people start reproducing those actions all over the world, that's going to obviously crater the world economy, and it's going to crater markets. So we were always going to have a major crisis in the markets at some point. What happened over the weekend is that MBS came along in the middle of this increasingly fraught atmosphere around the coronavirus. He went out and deliberately crashed them. I mean, he did this on purpose. It's a very bizarre thing to do, that he should actually want to crash the markets, but that's what he did. He deliberately crashed the oil price. He was going around getting all these people to talk to the media and tell them, you know, that Saudi Arabia is going to boost production to these absurd levels, unsustainable levels, by the way, and, you know, was planning to really, you know, knock down the price of oil as far as possible. He said he deliberately crashed the oil price in the knowledge that that would crash the markets. So you have the underlying problem, which is the reaction to the coronavirus. And by the way, we're already beginning to have shortages in shops here in Britain as people are stocking up. I've seen this for myself. So we have the underlying crisis, which is the coronavirus crisis. But on top of it all, we get MBS, and all the things that he gets up to. You could call it the perfect storm.
Yep, there you go.
How are things in Russia, Peter, with all this, with Corona stuff? I mean, what
I mean,
things like on the ground?
The number of people wearing masks is the same as ever. I mean, it's a flu season, so some people are wearing masks, but it's not prevalent. I was in a, oh, you guys probably know it. I was at the Europejski shopping mall. I didn't see one person wearing a mask. I wash my hands a lot. Yeah. That's my precaution. I don't touch anything on the metro, because that's, if you're going to get something, you're going to get it from the metro. I don't, irrespective if it's like coronavirus, any kind of influenza you'll pick up in the metro, and people know that, and people try not to touch things. Yeah. But there's no one's really talking about it. I mean, this whole thing is very, very odd, I have to say, because again, we're put in a position where very, very few people have expert knowledge about these things, okay? I'm certainly not a person that has expert knowledge, but what I'm looking at is how people are reacting to it and how governments are reacting to it. And of course, that's their responsibility to keep us safe. But where do you find the balance in keeping people safe and then while not creating a frenzy, okay? That's that really hard balance, okay? And unfortunately, there are those less than moral people that want to politicize it. Trump didn't do enough, the Chinese, blah, blah, blah. Okay. There's no evidence that I've come across that the Trump administration's at fault at anything of doing this, okay? You know, when someone says it, you can figure out where they come from, CNN or New York Times or something like that. So it's politically motivated, but it's creating a cascade effect. I mean, we're, you know, shutting down of schools and stuff like that. It's important to keep our kids safe, but you know, to what degree is you're doing is it's going to cause even more deeper problems. And one of the interesting things, particularly in the United States, is that this is a challenge to the American medical establishment, because unlike the rest of the world, it is diffuse and it's huge corporations and all that, and they only do it for profit, okay? And so, and there's no way, at least as I know, maybe a presidential directive where he can force corporations to do things because it's national security. But I mean, these corporations will say, sure, we'll help out. How much are you going to pay us? Okay, and that's their cold bottom line. All right, that's how they think, and they report not to the people but to their shareholders. So it's going to be a particularly interesting challenge in the United States because it has a different medical system. But you know, the cascade effect of all of this, I mean, people not consuming, they're not using their credit, not traveling. It's ricocheting all over the place. And I think it's very hard to conceive of the biggest picture of it all, because there's so many working pieces moving around. I mean, I've been, prior to our podcast here, I was reading quite a few things, and wow. And it's definitely going to affect the economy and the global economy, which is basically flat. And this is even worse. I mean, Italy's the third largest economy in Europe. It's on shutdown.
Absolutely. Wow. And the second biggest industrial economy within the EU. So if you shut down Italy, I mean, it's going to have a major impact on the EU. Now, Merkel made an extraordinary speech today to the Bundestag, in which she said that, you know, 70% of Germans, 60% of Germans are going to be infected. She didn't really seem to come up with any concrete proposals about what to do. But
and I was reading in the chat, Alexander, that in Australia someone said they announced 50% to expect 50%.
Well, there you go. So, I mean, you know, if you're going to get an epidemic on this scale, if government reactions are going to vary from, you know, extremes like we see in Italy to complete, you know, inability to cope with it, no real idea of what to do.
Yeah.
There's going to be a big impact. Inevitably there is.
Yeah, but I mean, at the same time, again, not an expert on this. I mean, of the 60% that will be infected, 2% might die, 1.5% might die.
Yes.
And these are going to be elderly people that have problems with immunity. I mean, again, you know, we're all put in this huge dilemma. We don't want to understate what's going on here, because people's lives are at stake here.
Yes.
But at the same time, what are the risks, the levels of risk? I mean, from some of the stuff that I have read is that you can have it and not even know you ever did have it.
Exactly. I've read the same. I've read exactly the same.
How do you ground this without being hysterical, without being negligent?
Yeah. Exactly. It's the choice seems to be between complacency and hysteria, and one just doesn't know which to jump. Yeah. I mean, I don't know which to jump on myself, actually. I mean, I lean towards the complacent, I have to say. I always tend to in these situations. I think that it will not be as bad as people think or fear. But regardless of that, the economic impacts will be huge. And they're going to disrupt everybody's plans. I mean, the British government's plans.
Huge short-term, Alexander, or huge long-term?
Well, it depends how severe this thing turns out to be. I mean, if it really is a massive, disease and millions of people die, then of course it would be long-term. But if it's over in a few months or weeks, then it will be a blip, because the economy will recover, and we will see already there's talk that in China, where the problem has been contained, there is a strong industrial recovery underway. So, in a year's time, if there is a quick recovery from this, it'll all be in the rearview mirror, and the world will go on. But of course, if it isn't like that, if there's a massive disruption, then it's.
But there's one thing in between. The U.S. presidential election.
Well,
and Joe Biden said at a very small crowd, he said it was because of the coronavirus. No, Joe, you get small crowds, okay? But he's going to come out with his plan to deal with the coronavirus. He's politicizing it. He's using it as a political weapon. It's a cudgel against Trump. And watch with how the media and the political elites and the liberal political elites suddenly, miraculously came to fore to back up Joe. What do you think that his speech here that he's going to make, or his announcement, they're going to gaslight us all? Just watch. That's why I find this to be very, very painful. Now they're politicizing sickness. Oh my God, this is where we are, okay? They're going to use it against Trump, watch, okay? They already have.
In practical terms, Peter, this really does benefit Biden a lot. I mean, less campaign rallies. He doesn't have to sit there and speak that much. And we know Biden can't speak for more than 10 minutes.
He's not the incumbent.
No matter what Trump does, he's going to be blamed, no matter what he does. So, I mean, this practically on the ground, this really does help Biden a lot. I mean, it's like a gift for Biden and his campaign, is it not?
Yep. But as it's been pointed out, the debates will happen. There might not just be a crowd. Okay. It'll just be a moderator with a mask or something, and they're not going to. No, they can't. You can't. If they try to cancel those, I mean, they'll be hell to pay. They'll be hell to pay.
I take a slightly different view. It depends how bad it is. I mean, if we're in a massive existential crisis.
But according to whom, it's how bad it is. See, that's what I'm getting at here. Yeah, I mean, it's really bad. There's panic buying and everyone's buying toilet paper. But is that a true reflection of the situation on the ground, what's happening in reality? And everything gets spun out of control. I'm agreeing with you in a different way.
But the point I was going to make is Trump does have certain huge advantages in this situation. He is the president. He is the person who can take charge and appear to be in control. He can keep the media spotlight on himself. He can be the person who's, giving the instructions to Homeland Security, to the health people. He can bring in the Surgeon General, have him speak in the White House. It might, depending on how Trump works it and how this situation works out, it could actually help him.
Has he been doing it, Alexander, though? Do you think Trump's been capitalizing on it so far?
Not very well, because I think he's as unsure about what this means as all of us are. But, he might find his way. What he can't afford is that it becomes his Hurricane Katrina. If he gives the impression that he doesn't care, because I'm sure that wasn't fair towards George W. Bush, but that was the impression a lot of people came with.
Yeah, good going, Brownie. Yeah, good work, Brownie.
Exactly. He doesn't care, and that he's not really up to it, and he doesn't know what. He's not really in control, not really in charge. Then, of course, he will lose. He will lose the presidency.
Well, I think but don't you think it's almost gets to the point where it doesn't really matter what he really does. It's going to be how the media frames it, okay? Well, he could be doing all the right things, and I'm not saying he is or isn't, okay? That's not the point here. But the way it's being framed, that's what really bothers me, okay? And that's how they're going to use it. So it's, again, it's really dirty politics, okay? And using this... look, you guys, even before the guy got into office, we're going to impeach him. So, I mean, I'm just putting out there, it's just another one that they're going to go after him on. It looks like it to me. And it's just going to be, Donald Trump is a master of messaging. He better be out on the best of his game right now.
Absolutely. What he needs to do is, if he gets, MSNBC and the New York Times talking about his inept response, He needs to do what he's been consistently doing ever since he became president before, which is go immediately on the attack. Say, how dare you? Here I am, I'm the president of the United States. I am fighting for the American people, and you are undermining me, and you are sowing panic, and you are being negative, and you have no faith in America's ability to overcome this. And here am I, the president, and I have that faith. That's what Donald Trump needs to do in this situation. And there, I have to say, he has been consistently successful.
And Fox News is doing it for him, Hannity and particularly Laura Ingraham, okay?
Absolutely.
Though at the same time, Tucker Carlson breaking from the pack, he wants people held responsible, and I think he takes a really good, reasonable middle ground there. It made a lot of news, that program you made yesterday. I was very impressed.
One quick question on Tucker Carlson, and then we'll let's say we'll tackle Erdogan before we get to Putin. Quick question, Peter and Alexander. I was watching his show, and Tucker Carlson continuously said the Chinese coronavirus. I mean, every sentence he was saying was the Chinese coronavirus, Chinese coronavirus. I mean, obviously we see what Tucker's point is. What do both of you make of how Tucker framed it, the words he used, and not to put you guys on the spot, but is China at fault here?
Well, first of all, I didn't like it because, I mean, a coronavirus has no nationality. And I think that needs to be made perfectly clear. China failed at the beginning. The first 2 months, the local government in Hubei, and quite possibly the central government too, because of course we don't know, they didn't understand what was going on. They didn't get a grip on the situation in Hubei, and they actually tried to suppress it. People who were warning them that the situation was becoming serious, whereas we know threatened by the police. Afterwards, and one has to say this, China responded very aggressively and very effectively. They are on top of the coronavirus crisis in China. Now, I think what Tucker is doing, and I think we're going to see a lot more of that, is that as this problem extends into the United States, you're going to have a Republican propaganda meme that this is all a problem that comes from abroad. It's all China's fault. It's not our fault. We Americans are not responsible for this, but we are coping with it because, you know, we are the kind of country that copes with crises. So I think this is partly a political campaign, and it's intended to help Donald Trump's re-election.
Okay, Alex, did he say China's coronavirus, or did he say Chinese?
Chinese.
Yes.
And I may be wrong. I may be 5% wrong, but I'm 95% sure he said Chinese coronavirus.
Okay. Well, what influenza killed over 50 million people after the First World War? The Spanish influenza.
And he made it a point. Actually, that's a good point, Peter. He made it a point to say that it didn't originate in China, though. When I was graduating from high school, I had the Russian flu.
Yeah.
Okay, and it was nasty. That knocked me out really bad. Okay, I was right before graduation. So, I mean, if he said, because I don't remember with perfect clarity, but if he said Chinese, then you can say Spanish, and then you can say Russian. All right,
Chinese, Chinese.
But at the same time, that's neither here nor there, okay? I mean, obviously, Tucker's program, he's got the China threat rubric. He hammers away at China because, you know, it's really interesting. The liberals, they like to go after Russia. And now the conservatives, they're going after China, okay? Everyone over there at Fox News, they got their China stuff, okay? Did the Chinese do the right thing? From what I understand, I mean, it's not, transparency isn't their strong suit, guys, okay? It's not, all right? It is an authoritarian society. But from people that I've seen, particularly on Fox, you know, medical experts, they've actually pushed back and said that they've worked well with their Chinese colleagues. I think it was on Tucker, and he kind of, his guest said, well, you know, I know these people, I worked with these people, the same procedures, protocols, they know what they're doing. And I think even Tucker was a little surprised by that, okay? I'm, again, we're put into a situation where, you know, it's kind of like Novichok, you know. I mean, I had to learn what that was and where you make it and how it's made and all that. You know, it's these kind of things that we're kind of left questioning because we don't have the expert knowledge. But obviously, if China was opaque and allowed it to get into the general population and spread abroad, then yeah, they have to take a level of responsibility. Of course they do. And yet there's no such thing as a free lunch here, okay? Now, I would like to know, not from politicians and not from hacks on television, but from real professionals. How would you judge China's reaction to all this? I'd be more interested in their opinion than someone on cable TV opining for political points.
Alexander, where are the Skripals?
Well, where indeed are the Skripals?
Peter mentioned Novichok. Where are the Skripals?
Where are the Skripals? The latest rumor is that they're being held in a prison or under house arrest or something like that here in Britain, that they're extremely depressed and unhappy, that there was talk about them going to Australia and New Zealand, but that's for some mysterious and unexplained reason has not happened. Whether any of that is true, whether indeed they're even alive, you know, we just don't know.
Why Australia and New Zealand? Why were they going there?
Very, very good question. Why Australia or New Zealand? There was a time that it was going to be Canada, but why Australia or New Zealand? Why?
Well,
why?
I said, you know, the Chinese can be opaque. Well, I think you say that about the UK government as well. Opaque. Where are these people?
It was a Theresa May hoax.
Are they being held against their will?
Well,
it would have seemed so.
The implication was, and this is an article in the Daily Mail, by the way, that they are being held against their will. They're apparently very depressed and very unhappy. This is what that article said. Now, can I just say, I mean, you know, we talk about the Skripals. This is a shameful affair. We have an investigation which seems to be going nowhere. There's all kinds of contradictory facts which are appearing, which are being, you know, published. The two people at the centre of it have disappeared, and even their families can't contact them. And of course, we had that extraordinary, disastrous address that Yulia Skripal gave, where it was so obviously rehearsed and staged. I mean, it reminded me, I have to say this, of the sort of things that, you know, the Soviet authorities used to do circa 1980. It was just creepy. I, as a British citizen who care about the rule of law, have been utterly shocked and dismayed by this and by the complete silence of the British media in covering this story.
Incredible story, the Skripals.
Well, absolutely.
Where's Lane Maxwell? we'll do that in a separate video. I see the chat. Yeah, where's Ghislaine?
Well, I know exactly. I mean, that I'm living in a country where people are disappeared, because that's essentially what's happened. Is extraordinary. And I mean, if the Skripals don't want to speak to members of their family, they should come before the media. They should have a press conference, and they should say so that we know.
All right. Well, we definitely know where Erdogan has been and where he is. And Peter, Erdogan was in your neck of the woods a couple of days ago. And there was a video actually circulating on Greek news channels where they had someone with a phone and they had Erdogan in the waiting room for Putin. I think he was waiting, I don't know, like 30 minutes or something like that. And I mean, you could see Erdogan was just getting completely frustrated. Alexander has commented about the rooms in which he was made to wait and where the meeting took place with Catherine McGrade and the statue behind them.
Exactly. I mean,
so Alexander, Peter, and then Alexander, let's get into this story. Erdogan, he also went to Europe and he got nothing. He got nothing out of Europe, which really surprised me. I thought he was going to pay off.
Yeah.
So Peter, Erdogan and his mischiefs in Moscow.
Yeah, two things: rock and hard place. Okay, that's where he is right now. He's gotten himself into such a knot right now. It's so difficult to. I mean, particularly in the last year, the Russians have helped him, get an off-ramp to get out of this mess. They really have tried very hard.
Yes.
I mean, all of the slurs against Russia on a regular basis in Western media, and they never consider the patience, the amazing patience of Russian diplomats. And he left empty-handed from Moscow, goes to Europe, left empty-handed. See, the problem with someone like Erdogan is that he thinks he can keep a game that's fluid constantly with so many different points. And it doesn't work that way. He's not that good at it, okay? He's good at it at home, but foreign policy, because he is a strong man, he sees himself as the Sultan and all that, but when he leaves his country's borders, he's just the Turkish president, okay? And the Russians hold all the high cards all of the time. And he just can't seem to get, he said Russia should get out of the way. Why? He doesn't have any good, just because I want you to go. It doesn't work that way, Mr. President. It doesn't work that way. So really, he has the pressure of these refugees coming into his country. He wants to blackmail Europe to let them, so he won't open the floodgates. Not going to be fooled again. The Europeans are not going to tolerate that. Ask the man in Greece. They're not going to tolerate it. And the situation in Idlib remains, okay? And the Turks lost ground there. And so Erdogan has to start, do you unmarble troops? I always thought the term marbling troops. So he has to get his troops away. He's going to have to give these jihadists up, or somehow ferret them to Libya so they can cause mischief there. It's been a bad few weeks for the Turkish president. He's won nothing. He's lost every single time. How he spends it at home is a different matter. But geopolitically, he's in a dead end.
Well, can I just point out, 30 minutes Putin kept him waiting, meets him under a statue of Catherine the Great. They talk for 6 hours.
Explain to our viewers why the statue is important.
Yeah, right. Catherine the Great, who was, of course, the Russian empress in the late 18th century, fought 2 enormous wars against the Turks, in which the Turks were comprehensively defeated, and in which the Russians captured Crimea. Crimea has been Russian ever since then. It was Catherine the Great who conquered it for the Russians. And Sevastopol, by the way, in Greek, it means the city of the empress, and the empress is Catherine the Great. In fact, people don't actually know, but that's the significance of that name. And not just, by the way, Crimea, she also captured all that territory that is now part of Ukraine, which used to be Novorossiya, cities like Odessa and Nikolaev, all those places along the Black Sea coast. So she comprehensively defeated the Ottomans, and she also negotiated the Treaty of Küçük-Kanaji with the Ottomans, which made the Russian state the protector of Christians throughout the Ottoman Empire. And by the way, since we're Greeks, her fleet under Alexander Orlov defeated the Turkish navy at the Battle of Chesma, which was one of the major steps towards Greek independence. So that is the significance of the statue of Catherine the Great. But to come back to that meeting, Erdogan is made to wait for 30 minutes. He has to negotiate with Putin with the statue of Catherine the Great there hovering in the back.
Towering over
him. He sits by, there's another moment when he's sitting next to a fireplace, and there's another ornament with the, showing, Russian soldiers fighting Ottoman soldiers during the Russo-Turkish War of 1876 to 78, which ended the Turkish rule of Bulgaria, another Ottoman defeat. And what does Erdogan achieve out of those 6 hours of talks? A memorandum that is one sheet of A4 paper, in which he has to concede virtually everything the Russians demanded of him.
And it was triple spaced.
It was triple spaced, exactly. So, one wonders what went on for those 6 hours, that took so long what they were talking about when, as I said, the result was this one document, which, as I said, loses him control of the M4 and M5 highways and all of that. So he talks to Putin. He has a very difficult and unhappy negotiation with Putin. He talks with Trump. Trump says, no, we're not going to send missiles to the border to take down the Russians for you. And he goes to Brussels, and the European Union, to my surprise, also says no to him. That, by the way, is a sign of how fraught politically the situation is in Germany now, because it shows that even Merkel, who's up to now always wanted to accommodate Erdogan, feels she can't do so. So he's got 3 no's, a massive one from the Russians, an important one from the Americans, and another one from the Europeans. He's not in a good place, exactly as Peter said.
Peter.
But it's not over yet, okay?
No, never is.
I was going to ask, what's his next move? What's Erdogan's next move? He gave a speech to, once again, to his domestic audience, I believe it was in the parliament. And he says, if the Syrians break the treaty that we have with Russia, then I'm going to come with full force. I'm paraphrasing. He says he's just going to attack everyone once again. Big words from Erdogan to a domestic audience.
That's
what
why
do you make of that?
Okay, that's fine. Okay. He's like a Klingon, you know, just declare victory and go home. Okay. No, the thing is that he's going to have to, for the first time, really abide by his agreements in dealing with Idlib, because, you know, this is a save face issue. I mean, Idlib is the last card to fall. All right. And the Russians have made it very clear that this has to be resolved, and we're not going to budge, and we will not allow the Damascus government to fall. That has been long-standing from 2015, and not much has been mentioned about it, but the Iranians also have made it very, very clear that the government in Damascus will not fall. Now, so, I mean, what part of that don't you understand? Okay, that's what they're saying to him right now. So it's up to him to save face at home, because his gambit in Syria is a failure, a complete failure. Now, the next step, or the penultimate step in all of this mess that never should have happened in the first place, is going to be a buffer zone. Okay, and I'm perfectly willing to understand Erdogan's issue with the Kurds. Okay, and that's a long, sordid story. Okay, but I think the Russians will convince Damascus that, you know, okay, he wants 35 kilometers, you know, how about 20, okay? And so there'll be a buffer zone in dealing with the Kurds. Reasonable, but will still be a Syrian sovereign territory that will be a buffer zone. That's how I see it ending here. But he's got to get his troops out. They're embedded with these terrorists. And what are you going to do with the terrorists? Well, I know what the Syrian government would like to do, and I have nothing against it, okay? You know what I mean.
Yeah. I think the one important point I would make is that despite all the, you know, the appearances which I've just described at the Putin and Erdogan meeting, the Russians are still trying to be conciliatory.
Always.
So, I mean, Putin was very careful to be very gracious in the words he used in the introductory comments, the ones that were published, and to commiserate with Erdogan for the deaths of the Turkish soldiers. Didn't give an inch, but, you know, he was very, very gracious to him, and he will continue to be. And that is because the Russians understand that Turkey is a major country, a very important and very powerful country. They do not want to see Turkey and Syria in an all-out war with each other. They will try, to the extent that they can, to try to achieve diplomatic solutions between the Syrians and the Turks, which will take Turkish feelings and Turkish interests into account. It's not that the Russians want to push Erdogan or the Turks into a corner. But Erdogan, and I think not just Erdogan, but many people in Turkey need to be realistic about what Turkey can do. They need to understand that this indefinite occupation of Idlib is not in Turkey's interests. Getting involved with groups like Al-Qaeda in Idlib is absolutely not in Turkey's interests. And they need to try and work with the Russians to find a face-saving off-ramp that may be possible if they work with the Russians. It will be completely impossible if they work against them.
Alexander, real quick to close out this topic before we move to Putin and the term limits. While Erdogan was in Moscow and he was in the EU, you also had the Greek Prime Minister Mitsotakis was also in Europe. Merkel actually did make an appearance from hiding.
Yes.
And she actually came out and supported Mitsotakis in Greece as well.
Yeah.
So is this a strong mandate now for the Mitsotakis government and for Greece to completely shut that border down? No questions asked, not an inch given, not one migrant. And the bulk of the migrants, we've done a video on this, 64% from the latest tallies that we've gotten are not even from Syria, they're from Afghanistan, 64%, 19% from Pakistan. Even Turkish migrants outnumber the Syrian migrants. This is a strong mandate for Greece.
I think it is.
That border.
I think it is. And can I just say, I mean, you know, irrespective of one's feelings about Mitsotakis, and I know there are many critics, I think he has handled this situation diplomatically with great skill. I mean, he's been able not just to show that he's prepared to protect Greece's and Europe's borders, but he's been able to make sure that he has strong support for what he's doing with the Europeans and to even bring Merkel on side. And we know how difficult it is to get Merkel on side. She hates coming out and actually taking a strong position on anything, which makes her an extremely difficult person to work with. So yes, I think the Greeks do have that mandate to control their borders. The must thing, I must say, is that of course with the Europeans, a mandate given one day may mean very little the next. And it does depend so much on what happens in Germany.
All right. Putin, term limits. Peter, is Putin going to be president for life? What's your take on this very strange turn of events?
Well, you know,
it's very strange.
That's my admission as well. I'm not really sure what to make of it. I stand by my analysis the last time we talked about this, that the initiated constitutional changes would bring about a transition of power and a development of consensus within the power structures of the government. All of this was good. Go back and look at our video on it. The proposal to wipe the slate clean and start all over again, I don't think stands up constitutionally, and it's going to go to the Constitutional Court. You have to understand how the Russian parliament works, the Duma works, and the United Russia Party, that is a major party. They are very, very, very loyal to Putin, and this could be, in my mind, a kind of a gesture on their part. Putin's reaction to it was very tepid. Let people vote on it, which always is good to let people vote. But there was no enthusiasm, or it didn't come from him, at least from what I understand. I find it really bewildering. I was getting prepared to do a recording yesterday on Joe Biden and his gaffes, and 20 minutes before going to the studio, Katya, my editor, saying, "Did you see this?" He just said, I said, "Go to the RT webpage, it's breaking news." I said, "What is this?" I was completely befuddled by it. And then during the course of the evening, Alexander Mikiris was frantically on WhatsApp with me, and he was giving his opinion. And I haven't decided one way or another, but it's not a power grab. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. If he's all powerful, you don't have to grab for power. Come on, everybody, wake up, okay? So I'm not taking it very seriously at this point. I've always believed that it's not that Putin wants to stay, it's that he can't leave. And these constitutional amendments that were suggested was a way for him to leave quietly. Now, you always have to remember, Russia's democratic experience from 1991 to the present is very young still, okay? It's still developing institutions and developing with reacting to the situation on the ground, which is good, okay? It's not rigid. But once you know the day that President Putin will no longer be President Putin, people start, shaking things up and saying, and look for political advantage. I think he wants to avoid that, obviously. And then this may create some kind of ambiguity. Okay, let's look at what the wording is of all of these changes and what people will be voting on, and we'll reconvene and talk about it then, because there's too many things out there that don't seem to connect to me. Alexander Makiris, what do you think?
Well, I have to say, I agree, essentially. I mean, I looked at Putin's comments, and in some ways they're extremely interesting because they're very thoughtful. And he discussed, the history of Russia and the recent history of Russia and the state of Russia and the point of these constitutional amendments, all the things that Putin usually does. And as you absolutely rightly say, he was extremely unenthusiastic, and that's putting it mildly, about the proposal that was put forward. Now, that may be a feigned lack of enthusiasm, but for what it's worth, I don't think so. What Putin doesn't want, and I think you've nailed it, he doesn't want to come out and say straightforwardly, I am going in 2024, because he knows that if he does that, Russia being the kind of country that Russia is, it's still, as he said very clearly in his speech, you have to read it through fully, it is still a work in progress, and it is still not fully stable. And people still look very much to the top for authority. If he says now, 4 years before 2024 comes, I am definitely leaving then, his own authority will be shaken, because people will say, well, Vladimir Vladimirovich isn't going to be here in 4 years' time, so we don't need to carry out his orders because we can wait him out. You'll have some people thinking like this. And at the same time, at the very top of the political system, you're going to have all kinds of people maneuvering for position and trying to find their own way to get into a position of advantage for when he's gone. He will also be put under immense pressure in that kind of scenario to name a successor, which again, I don't think he wants to do.
I don't think he will.
Because that would be, again, it would undermine him, and it would set up for the same kind of problems that Merkel has just had with AKK.
Well, one of the interesting things too is that, let's say, for example, go back and look at our video, because we talk at length about all these different changes that are being proposed. I don't want to repeat it here, but let's say they do. They take the term limits off this individual person, and that's why I don't think Putin likes it, because he wants to be a nation of laws and not of men. Yeah. Okay, but let's just say they do. It doesn't mean he's going to take advantage of it.
Well, of course, exactly. But just to come back, I think the other thing was, if you read his speech carefully, he drops a very heavy hint that he thinks this proposal is unconstitutional.
It came from him, not the media, and not from
exactly. And he says, this should be looked at by the Constitutional Court to see whether it is consistent with the principles of the rest of the Constitution. Now, I'm going to say my own opinion here, and I'm absolutely, obviously, not an expert on Russian constitutional law. But I think the idea of introducing term limits and then postponing that for 12 years is legally very bizarre indeed. And I would have thought that most constitutional lawyers in most countries would say so. So I think, this is my guess, that he still intends to go in 2024. I think he expects that the Constitutional Court will turn this proposal down, but he doesn't want to commit himself publicly and to taking an open position, where, as I said, that would only cause instability in a political system, which he has made it his life's task to stabilize. Read the speech and see how concerned about stability he is.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that this whole thing with term limits, why wasn't it introduced when the original package was introduced to the public? I mean, again, I don't understand what's going on here. This was a proposal that came from the majority party in the parliament, okay? And again, you know, you have to understand Russians' relationship with authority. It's very, very complex, okay?
Yes.
There's slavish adherence to authority, but there's a deep rebellious side also to the Russian character. And it's very, you can see it all through Russian literature. It's really profound in Russian literature. Yes. So, but I'll tell you, I work at a news outlet, and when it was announced, everyone was turning to me, what do you think it means, Peter? I said, I'm not an expert on the Russian Constitution. You guys should be telling me what it means.
I mean, there is also, of course, the dynamic of the United Russia Party, which is the dominant party in Russia. It's very loyal to Putin, as Peter says, but it also rides on Putin's coattails. And they must be very nervous.
Yeah, and he's not even, you know, they want to hang on Putin's coattails, but Putin has never joined their party.
Exactly. So they don't want him to go because, of course, from their point of view, if he does go, their own position suddenly looks less secure. So, you know, you have all these complicated dynamics coming together. But I come back to my own belief. I've been following what Putin's been saying, and he's been talking a lot about the constitutional changes over the last couple of weeks. The very strong impression I've been getting is that he intends to go.
Yeah, me too.
He even said as much. Came very close to saying as much in an interview recently, in which he said, you know, it's not that he doesn't want to stay indefinitely, not because he thinks that he'll go mad if he does stay, but because he's worried that if he does continue to stay, that will affect Russia's constitutional and political evolution. So I think he's very conscious of all of these things. I think he intends to go. But as I said, I don't think he wants to be put in a position where he says now in March 2020 that he's going to go definitely in 2024. Because as I said, I think he's worried that if he does that, he will undermine his own position and weaken the country's stability.
And undermine his legacy.
Absolutely. Because, and create a very, very difficult transition period going on for 4 years.
And he doesn't want that. That's the last thing he
wants. Exactly.
Okay. Awesome analysis, guys. You ready for some super chats?
Absolutely.
All Absolutely. Right. Let's get
always look forward to them, Mike.
Right.
They're always so interesting.
Well, now we have super chats and we have new members as well. I'll read out as well. New members to Duran, the Duranners. All right.
Duran. Duranners. How can you say Duranisti? Okay.
Duranistas.
Duranistas.
We have Bruce Alexi, new member, new Duranner. Thank you, Bruce. Welcome. Toilet sauce, 10 euros. Let's see. Peter, I think Putin can't set a date for his departure from office without turning himself into a lame duck like Merkel. He also likes to have multiple options just in case.
Well, no, you've been watching my podcast because I always say that about Putin. He always wants to have his options there. That's a very interesting observation. We've never really had a lame duck situation in the post-Soviet period, okay? Because Yeltsin left prematurely, and well, everybody more or less wanted Medvedev to go. So this is uncharted waters, but there's something to it. And let's be fair. I mean, even Putin thinking of himself as a lame duck is probably a kind of an odd feeling. Okay, like I said, this is a project in motion. Okay, and there've been a number of changes, and we have to remember the basis of the Constitution now was written under Yeltsin, not under Putin, and Putin has done very little to tinker with it.
Absolutely.
Okay? Very little. I mean, he could have easily, he had a super majority in the Duma, they could have just changed things left and right. They never did it. Everything is incremental.
Yes.
That's what it's all about.
Very, very much so. If I can just say, if people want to know what Putin is saying, the place to go is his website, which is en.kremlin.ru, all small case. You should always go and read it because that's where you get his actual words. Never believe what the Western media publish as his words. Sometimes it's edited in such a way as to make it look completely different from what he said. And I'm afraid there have been a few occasions when things he's alleged to have said, I can say for a fact, he never said them.
Let's give the best example. The end of the Soviet Union was it was a catastrophe. It was a catastrophe for what was the exact phrase? I mean, the thing is that, you know, they made it look like he was lamenting the passage of communism, and he wasn't. Saying just the opposite. Said with the end of the Soviet Union, millions of Russians found themselves in another country.
Exactly.
Okay, and he was talking about the misery that so many people went through because of a massive political and sudden change. I mean, it's one of his first speeches, I think, to the Assembly of the Federal Assembly and the lower house, and it's just continuing, and it continues to be misinterpreted. You have to read the whole paragraph.
Yes, yes. It's a very careful paragraph which has been distorted out of all reason. I mean, so that it's ended up appearing to say the opposite of what he did actually.
I find that hard to believe, Alexander Peter. The mainstream media lying and misrepresenting.
well, if
no chance, guys. I mean, come on.
Well,
no chance. There's no women running for the Democrat Party anymore.
Don't worry, Alex. There really are Easter eggs, okay? And I'll make sure you understand. Oh, it's okay. It's all right.
All right.
I want to burst any bubbles here.
The mainstream media wouldn't lie, would they?
Yeah.
Well, you know that Joe Biden has a very high IQ. Okay, so.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Joe Mentum.
Yeah.
The No Malarkey tour. All right, Valias, $20 super chat. Thank you, Valias, for that super chat. As always, Alexander from Alex, €2 super chat. What is going on in Hong Kong now? Is it over?
Well, that's a very good question. It seems to be over because we've not heard any protests or news about protests for months and months and months and weeks. And I suspect it probably is over. I mean, nobody said it is over, but I'm sure it is over. I think the coronavirus thing has no doubt played a role in dampening down any protests. And I suppose people don't want to go out and protest and, you know, meet together in large groups in this sort of situation. But it was already winding down before the outbreak came. So I think the Chinese government basically waited it out.
Okay, from Strict Langford, $9.99 super chat. Peter, love your mugs and your tops. How long do you guys think we will put up with this fiasco democracy? General question. This fiasco democracy.
Well, the thing is that people believe in democracy. That's a good thing, but the elites don't. Okay, I mean, just look at this whole thing around Joe Biden. You know, that whirlpool, that 48 hours, and everybody's going. Look, that's smoke-filled rooms. That's the donor class. Okay, it's nothing to do with democracy. It's about maintaining their status quo and their position in it. It's so sad that, you know, so many people fought so hard for the franchise, but people in power it's only to be manipulated and to be used, all right? That's again, Bernie breaks my heart. And I'm speaking as a conservative, okay? Because he had a real movement. He still does. He created a movement. Jeremy Corbyn had that same opportunity and squandered it, okay? Yeah. So
beware of false prophets. Beware.
Yeah, well, the thing is that grassroots democracy takes a hit every single time, and it's populism. Oh my goodness, okay, that's terrible. No, I mean that's what it's all about, and the popular mobilization. It's amazing to see these days, okay, but it happens because people have been left with one thing. One thing they have left, that's the franchise, that's the vote. That's the only thing that hasn't been completely taken away from them. Look at the voter suppression that happens during these primaries, you know, where you have to wait 7 hours to vote. That's done intentionally. They don't want people to vote. They don't, and for Bernie, turnout was everything. And then the coronavirus comes, okay? People don't go out. So democracy, it's a nice thing, okay? I wish our elites believed in it.
All right. Thank you for that super chat. And thank you for your compliment on our mugs. Our mugs are great. Duran shop.
Yeah.
Support us there. Alexander from Sparky.
He's got this emblem on his mugs, by the way. You find it if you want to have a mug like the one that Putin drinks from. Well, it's the same coat of arms that you see.
All right. From Sparky, let's see, where is it? DNC suddenly notices Joe's cognitive issues, HRCs, then drafted to come to the rescue. Electability doesn't matter. Hillary has the power over the DNC.
Well, can I just say, so many people have been discussing that scenario, and not by any means the kind of people who, go in for far-fetched and outlandish scenarios. I don't think it's going to happen. I think ultimately they will give Biden the nomination, and I think he will run for the presidency. I think it'd be difficult to turn around and not have that happen, but I'm prepared to wait and believe it.
No, I just you know what the thought this entered my mind? It's just that Biden, right the day before they give him the nomination, they decide against it, and then they give it to Hillary, and then they say, "It's okay, Joe, you're already president." Okay? and we have a place that's called the Oval Office for you, and there'll be a lot of women with white dresses and men with white coats, and they're going to visit you every single day, and they're going to call you Mr. President Joe, and Joe will be very happy about that, and they just take him quietly off the stage. No, I'm agreeing with Alexander McCurris. I think that is a call of desperation, and it will look like that. It will look like that, okay? Because you're going to get everybody annoyed in the Democratic Party if you do that. Everybody's going to be upset, okay? But you have to remember, it's the donor class. Yeah. These are the people that are making the decision. They're making the decision. Yeah. And I am convinced the donor class doesn't see huge downside with Trump being reelected. Their gig flow maintains, all right? This is very, very going through the motions here. And Joe is the perfect guy to do it to, because he'll just say, okay, thanks, that's great. Where's the Jell-O? Okay, you get 2 servings of Jell-O in your Oval Office, Joe.
any flavor you wish for.
Yeah, and we'll have pineapple chunks in it if you like. Okay, good. Okay, because Trump gets 2 scoops of ice cream. You can get 2 servings of Jell-O. Okay, what do you think, Joe?
I think Hillary's gonna pop up.
I know you got this on your head. I got
it on my mind. I think Hillary's gonna pop up.
I'm not discounting the possibility.
I'm not 100%, but that's like what they would call a fail-safe. But I think it's a lose proposition. Yeah. Okay, and it will show the Democrats are desperate, and the Trump base will say he did it again, and they're going to come out. See, people fail to point out, the media doesn't like to talk about it. Fox does a little bit. During these primaries and caucuses, Republicans go to theirs too. And Trump is getting like 92%.
Hold that thought, Peter. This super chat's for you from Brando. Hold that thought. You read Brando's mind, or Brando read your mind. Trump got 637,000 votes in Michigan. Obama 174,000 in 2012. By comparison, not sure what other president got this, but the gap is extraordinary.
I think the last time this was with Reagan. I think that's the last time it happened. Okay, but yeah, I mean, the people see. You focus like South Carolina went for Joe. Oh my God, they took momentum. It's gonna go. The Republicans are going to win South Carolina in the general. Okay, I mean, who cares? It's this is, you have to understand that this is a bread and circuses scenario every presidential election, because the media needs these hype stories to get advertisers for, it's a money-making operation, okay? This is, people make a lot of money off of this. That's why we get all of the hypes over everything. Joe Biden was swearing at some guy about guns. That's just reported yesterday. He blew up, okay, So I guess that's a big story, all right? No, it has to be reported. You have to keep the what we say in television, the rundown full, story after story after story, to keep people's attention, keep those eyeballs, get those clicks, okay? And so that drives so much of this here. And I'm not that I'm saying we're adding to it, but when you throw in it's a possibility that Hillary could get it, that adds to the frenzy, okay? If they go that far, the Democratic Party is done. It's toast. Stick a fork in it and turn it over. It's done.
Well said. From Laura Mullaney, new member, new Duraner. Thank you, Laura, for joining. Welcome. From B.A. Alexander, 10 Australian dollars. In Rudy Giuliani's Common Sense with Steve Bannon, Rudy hints that he has multiple pieces of evidence of corruption directly implicating Biden. Are they holding on to this to unleash in the general?
I think exactly what they're going to do. I think they've piled it all up, and we're going to see it all coming, and it'll be a flood, and we'll see how Joe responds to all of these things. He's got the media on his side. They'll be saying that this is all being concocted by Donald Trump. They'll be saying this proves that, all that they were saying about how Trump...
Ukraine's been debunked. They always say that.
Exactly, all of that. So we're going to... But that's going to be the battle that's coming. And we'll see how much evidence Rudy does indeed have.
No, the Russiagate hasn't been debunked because Ukrainegate hasn't been debunked because Ukraine is bunk. Okay, yeah. Giuliani is the anointed henchman. Okay, he's put himself out there. I mean, and he gives Laura Ingraham those tantalizing interviews, which sometimes I think he says too much. But what he's doing, he's like a bullfighter with his red cape. I mean, he's just putting it in their face. It could be a bluff too. He's a political operator, okay? Yeah. But he's been snooping around, okay? And why in the world would they use it now? Oh no, this thing is going to be showcased, okay?
Absolutely.
You just think about this, everybody. Think about what Trump has been through for 3.5 years, and then when he has the chance to go full animal, he's going to do that exactly. And he is going to come out. He's like in a cage, and now he's going to come bursting out. I think you're going to see Trump at his best once the convention's over. He's going to take out the knives, and it's going to be a spectacle. It's really going to be a spectacle. And you think about all the nonsense that he's had to put up with from the media. See, criticizing his policies is fine, okay? And we do it on these podcasts all of the time. We criticize his Venezuela policy. We criticize his policy towards Israel. We criticize the killing of Soleimani, the lack of movement in getting troops out of Iraq. Kudos for getting troops out of Afghanistan, which we should do a separate video on that. Yeah. His whole engagement with Hong Kong, I think we all disagree because we disagree on policy, but we don't go after the character assassination. We've been talking about Joe Biden, and we even here have kid gloves on talking about Joe Biden because we don't want to be disrespectful to someone's mental health, all right? But he is running for office, and we have a right to talk about his ability to perform in public. So Donald Trump is he's gonna payback, that it's a bitch, but watch it, he's gonna do it.
Yeah.
All right. Yes, we will look at FASA B56, Federal Accounting Standards. We'll take a look at that. Mm-hmm. We will take a look at that. Maybe we'll do a video on it. Peter from Sparky, election fraud fell short in 2016 general election. It's turned up to 11 in 2020. Despite Trump's huge rallies, the establishment is shameless.
Well, you mean election corruption, mean like voter suppression and things like that? Is that what you're getting at? Yeah.
What you just mentioned.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, from the Democrats' point of view, this is one big dirty trick out in open. See, in 2016, they did it clandestinely. Now they're just in your face, okay? Moving the goalpost, okay? There are only 2 white men in the campaign. Tulsi's not white, and she's not a man, okay? We're just being gaslit all of the time. And no one's talking in the liberal media about Joe's record. What a deplorable, despicable, dirty guy, okay? I mean, on everything. Whoa, really?
Just the damage he did to Ukraine. Anyway, global citizen Alexander, €5 super chat. There is no room for Bernie's politics in the current U.S. political system.
No, it's
Citizens United versus FEC ensures this, and Trump is no exception.
I agree with this completely. I don't think there is any room in the political system for Bernie's ideas. It's bizarre.
I don't agree.
It's bizarre that Bernie himself didn't understand that. We're talking about the political system, not maybe the American electorate. Then there may be some traction.
No, actually, if you look very carefully, the majority of Americans actually are quite progressive. Now, hang on. And I'm going to agree with you from a different trajectory. It's just that the packaging and the explaining of these ideas. See, when Bernie talks about healthcare, which is the single most important issue for American voters in both parties, but by far. But see, when Bernie talks about Medicare for all, he's easily gaslit by the right. This is Venezuela. Okay, and Bernie has never broken out of that. He's never taken it head on, and he's never explained what Medicare for all would mean for Americans. I don't even know what he means by that, okay? And I've been following him. A lot of ideas, people have progressive ideas, and progressivism is really been the oil that has really moved the body politic over the last century, okay? The thing is that it's his packaging of it, his delivery of it, his supporters' understanding of it, and of course how his opponents will paint him as a communist, which he certainly is not, okay? So I fault him for not explaining himself better and not reacting to all the criticisms that are thrown at him. He's a smart guy, and I think a lot of his ideas are interesting, but he's never convinced me of any of them, and that's his fault. You see what I'm saying? You see what I'm saying? Because the American people are in many ways very, very conservative, but on some political ideas, they're very, very progressive. And it's the secret is to be able to unlock that combination, okay? Trump did it, okay? If he was aware of it, conscious of it or not, he understood intuitively a lot of these issues that people were reacting to. I mean, if you go back to 2016, look at what the Democrats, look what Hillary was talking about. She almost just blew off as insignificant trade. And Trump made that one of his main issues. And that's why he broke down the blue wall, because people said, yeah, trade, we lost our jobs to foreign countries, to China. If that may be true or not true, but they believe that. And trade is really, really important to people. And Trump understood that, okay? And I think Bernie didn't understand it well enough in 2016 and in 2020, okay? And he allowed too many people to interpret what he believes in, okay? Not that I'm saying I agree with Bernie, but he wasn't allowed to air his ideas. Well, no, he was allowed, he just didn't do a good job of it.
All right. Alexander from Flying Boar, $5 super chat. Tulsi gets ignored because of her Hindu faith and her PM Modi.
I don't agree with that, actually.
I don't either.
I mean, if at the moment the United States, on the contrary, wants to build good relations with India and with Modi, so no, I don't think that's the reason. I think it's because her foreign policy positions are completely unacceptable, and I think that's unacceptable to the Democratic Party, unacceptable to the political elite of the United States, and they made a collective decision to freeze her out.
Yeah, I mean, do you think anybody in the body politic of America knows what a Hindu nationalist is? Huh? They don't, okay? No. It's a slur. Now, yeah. So there are smart people that have been concerned about how she views Hindu nationalism in the context of India itself, okay? But I mean, in the scheme of things, no, it's just a rock thrown at her, exactly from what Alexander McCura said, because of her heterodox ideas about foreign policy. So they just slur her. Okay.
I should say that there's one decision she's made which I just do not understand, and which I think may have been a mistake, and that was not to stand for the House of Representatives.
Yeah.
I mean, I predict that she's going to find it extremely difficult to maintain any kind of political traction after this election.
From Flying Boar, Peter, how Russia is handling coronavirus crisis compared to China, EU, US, and rest of the world. Did anyone die in Russia?
Not that I am aware of, okay? But the coronavirus is not top of mind here, okay? People are not talking about it. I mean, at work, I put it up on Facebook, a warning, if you have cold symptoms, please don't come into our premises. I mean, we're aware of it. Our HR department sent out a memo to everyone about what they should do. It's basic common sense stuff. You know, it acknowledges a concern, but it's not top of mind. I don't see people walking around with, you know, toilet paper, you know, bags and bags of toilet paper. And nobody at work is, I mean, the way people talk about the coronavirus, because I work in media, is we talk about how the West is reacting to it. It's not something of major concern in Russia, at least yet.
No. Okay. I'm going to say again, if you look at what the government has been doing, the Russian government has been quite preemptive, and it's been fairly ahead of the curve. So it restricted movements of people from China, for example, at a fairly early stage. It's now restricting people from Italy. It seems to be monitoring fairly effectively those people who've come into the country who actually are infected. And it's done quite a lot of tests. So it's at the moment fairly well on top of this. And there have been 2 meetings between Putin and his advisors in which they've discussed how to respond to the coronavirus quite effectively. So one could perhaps say that one of the reasons it hasn't reached Russia and hasn't become such a big talking issue in Russia is because up to now, the government's response has been a fairly effective one. Whether it will continue to be, we will see.
Okay. From Sparky,
and plus, you know, you don't really have competing lobbies and competing bureaucracies. It's very uniform. They have universal health care here. So, I mean, word goes out, it goes out to everybody and through the chain of command. So it's very, in that way, it's easier for Russia to react in one very clear plan, okay? It's not negotiating with this company and developing that. And then that's not there. That's why it's much easier all the way from Kaliningrad to Vladivostok. It's the same medical system.
Indeed, so. And I would just add, and it's a point Alex and I have talked about, it's such a vast country and such, in some ways, a thinly populated one, that if you have to isolate populations, it's actually much easier to do than it is to do in, say, Lombardy. Because people, I mean, if you want to isolate a city like Perm, for example, you can do it. It's not such a problem.
Yeah, good point. From Sparky Alexander, Biden getting nomination helps inoculate swamp from Ukraine investigation of Biden. Swamp had better say that the investigation is political.
That's exactly right. That is it. That is that puts the finger on it extremely well. I still expect Donald Trump to bring up this subject, or at least not Donald Trump himself, perhaps, but the Republicans. I'm sure Rudy Giuliani has all the materials and papers there, but the Democrats will argue that this is a purely political campaign in order to help Donald Trump become president. So
just like Russiagate was a purely political campaign. Yeah, well, of course it was. These people have no self-reflection at all.
No, well, they don't. They don't. I mean, this is the way that it's been, that it's done all the time. And I mean, you know, there's a very interesting article by Glenn Greenwald, for example. We were talking about, you know, Joe Biden's cognitive issues, and Greenwald makes the point that, you know, lots of Democrats have been raising them and were raising them during the primaries, the early parts of the primaries.
MSNBC did it a lot.
Exactly. But of course, if it comes up now, all of that will be forgotten. It'll be purely Trump being absolutely horrid by making these unsubstantiated slurs against this fine man who's only got a speech impediment.
All
That's what it's going to be.
All Trump has to do is quote Cory Booker. Do you think you can get the ball past the line? That's what Cory Booker said. Okay, Julio Castro also, actually, he even said it on CNN in the last news cycle. Okay, so you can't say this is a vast right-wing conspiracy, because the liberal media was talking about it before South Carolina.
Exactly.
God, it's such a Soviet-esque environment. You know, they just wipe away the past. Nothing happened. It's not there. Everything is in the present.
Absolutely.
That's why they won't look at. I mean, I'm sure that Trump's got a whole wing of the White House going through everything about Joe. And oh man, I bet you every once in a while, Trump looks at his phone and say, "Oh, another one you got, another Easter egg for me. Okay, great. Keep it in the file. We're gonna put that to use."
So much material to go after him with. So much material. All right. From Oran, new member, Oran XX, a new Duraner. Thank you for joining, Oran. Donnie Chappell, new member. Thank you for joining, Donnie. From Mona J.E. Kobus, new member. Thank you for joining. Mona from Donnie Chappelle, $20 super chat. Thank you, Donnie, for that super chat. Valley S, new member. Welcome, Valley S. Thank you for joining. Alan Watson, new member. Thank you for joining. Alan Lachette, new member. Thank you for joining, Lachette. Let's see, where are we now? Alexander from Sparky. World economies still oil-based. A flood may cause damage, but ultimately rain is good for crops.
Yes, I agree. I think ultimately, if you have a situation where the world economy is, where demand and investment and production are collapsing, having a lower oil price is an adjustment to that contraction, and actually is a boost. It's reflationary. I mean, I agree. But of course, there will be massive trouble along the way, because there'll be huge dislocation, because you have all of the various big oil majors who've invested massively in oil. You have all of the companies that have lent money to the oil majors and to the shale drillers to do that. It's riddled throughout the financial system. You have all of the people who've taken out hedges in oil. It's so wrapped up in the way in which the whole economy works that there will be enormous dislocation. But over time, yes, I agree. I think in the end, it will be something that will help the world economy come out of the slump.
What most people don't understand about oil prices is that it's not high or low prices. It is predictable prices and stability of prices. See, all of the institutions that Alexander Mikiris just mentioned, they need to plan. Yes. Okay, and when you have an erratic oil price, high or low, it screws up all of your plans and your projections, and that's the dislocation. That is the dislocation. Over time, you get used to any price, virtually any price. Yes. Okay, but when it happens quickly and intentionally, that's when people get very, very concerned, and obviously the markets react very negatively to it, because what they're looking for is stability.
Exactly. They don't. Markets do not like unpredictable situations. And when you have a person like MBS saying that he's going to flood the world with oil, and that he's planning for $10 oil, or even lower, which he apparently is, then of course exactly. But that in itself is create enormous uncertainties. So that spooks people, because they say, what kind of a person are we dealing with? You want predictable leaders, you want predictable policies, and you want predictable prices so that you can plan. People in Saudi Arabia must be the most confused and worried and even desperate in this situation. Think of all those people who invested, all those Saudis who were persuaded to put their savings into the Aramco IPO.
Good point. Rainy Steps, Peter, 279 super chat. What's Russia's view of the UN and the WHO?
Well, Peter. No, you go. Yeah, well, Peter. Okay. The UN. Russia is a member of the UN Security Council. It is a very strong defender of the UN system, despite being in a state of almost constant quarrel with the other UN institutions, because it regards the UN as the major prop of the whole system of international law, and it wants to establish the UN Security Council, or perhaps I should say it wants to re-establish the UN Security Council as the major focus of the international system. So Russia's position, for example, is that if the United States wants to carry out a regime change war in Iraq, well, it cannot do that because that is against international law as set out in the United Nations Charter. And before the US takes action of any kind of that nature, it needs authorization from the UN Security Council. So this is very much the principles that Russia follows. It doesn't do it out of some utopian or idealistic belief in the quality of these institutions, and it certainly doesn't do it because it sees the UN as some sort of embryonic world government. It does it because it sees the UN as a device for promoting stability and as an instrument for protecting Russian national interests.
It's purely defensive, exactly.
Purely defensive.
Yeah. I know people want us to say trash the UN, destroy the UN, because we've gotten that before from people. No, I mean, I can understand people in the United States how they feel about the UN, and that's a nuanced conversation. But from on the outside world, Alexander Makiris put it very eloquently. It's a defensive measure against hegemony. Okay.
All right.
Well, there was also quickly the WHO. I don't know what Russia's views of the WHO are, but you know the Chinese work with it pretty successfully, and I'm pretty sure the Russians would. Russians generally like multilateral institutions.
Yep.
I mean that tends to be their position. What they don't like is situations where those institutions are taken over by the Western powers. But even an organization like the Organization for Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, the OPCW, which is now quite obviously captured by the United States and the Western allies, and its Western allies, the Russians have said that they're not going to pull out of it. So that's very much the Russian line. You preserve those institutions, you try through working inside them to bend them in your favor. And I don't get the sense that they have any great quarrels with the WHO.
Peter, super chat from Raul Pinto, $5. If there is a fight for Saudi throne, do you think ISIS can rise up again, especially since their source of funding has always been Saudi Arabia?
Well, that's certainly a fear. And certainly Al-Qaeda would like that, okay, because they see the Saudi royal family as a form of corruption. So they certainly would be in the wings to look for, take advantage of instability. See, that's what my previous answer in dealing with this here. I mean, would it be nice to see MBS gone? Yeah, but what's going to replace it? You be careful. See, this is what regime change does all the time. And they want to get rid of something, but they don't know what's going to replace it. And I worry about that, okay? I mean, it is sitting on a lot of oil, okay? And somebody would really like to take advantage of that. The oil-based economy isn't going to go away for a very long time, folks, okay? As much as people talk about the Green New Deal and all of that, I mean, these are pipe dreams.
How dare you?
How dare you? Now they got the anti-Greta, apparently.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, Alexander Flying Boar, update on Nord Stream 2.
Well, I gather, as I said, the Russians are going to complete it, and it'll be finished either at the end of this year or at the beginning of next year. I think that's a done thing. The Germans want it done, the Russians want it done. It will be done, and the crash in the oil price means that Russian gas and Russian oil are now being produced at levels that the US can never compete with. So the idea of replacing Russian gas and Russian oil on Western markets or European markets with expensive liquefied US natural gas, it just isn't going to happen. The Saudis, by the way, have been mumbling about positioning themselves as a gas exporter also, but it'll take at least a decade for that to happen if it ever does.
And the Qataris already have a corner on the market.
Yeah. But in terms of
guys, I got to get going pretty soon. I got to get ready for work. work tomorrow.
All right.
Yeah.
We've still got quite a few super chats, but we'll move through them. From, let's see, from Tim Murray, new member. Thank you very much, Tim Murray, for joining. Peter from Patricia Klein, 10-pound super chat. Do we think coronavirus is a dry run for the big one?
Well, I've heard people say that. In fact, there was a very interesting article that I saw in the British media by somebody who seemed to be fairly well experienced, who said, that there's going to be a pandemic, a very serious pandemic at some point, that the coronavirus is not it. So I don't know. I'm not an epidemiologist. I'm certainly not any kind of person who understands viruses or diseases or any of those sort of things. But it is startling what an impact the coronavirus has actually had for a disease which perhaps is not quite so dangerous. So, I'm open to that possibility, though it's not one I look forward to with any pleasure.
All right, Peter from Sparky, could globalists be overreacting to novel coronavirus in order to hurt Trump and other non-globalists?
It's always a possibility, but yeah, I don't have the dots to connect, but the thought has crossed my mind. Yes, to be honest with you, but I don't see the evidence there yet. And those that are thinking that are not crazy, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. Okay, let's not get ahead of our skis.
It has to be said. I mean, I think we've all thought this at some point, and this has come at a most extraordinary moment. I mean, just as Russia was starting on its national development plan with its major infrastructure programs, as the Chinese were starting with the Belt and Road Initiative, as the British government was working on its Brexit proposals, as Donald Trump looked really safe for re-election, suddenly coronavirus comes along and all of this is in jeopardy. I agree with Peter. I don't believe that this is a fabrication done by globalists to throw this off course. I haven't seen the evidence for it. I'm going to go for the moment with the theory that it is what it appears to be.
And how much is Trump really a threat to these people?
Well, that's another point. That's another very good point.
People exaggerate this. I mean, Trump is a moderate Republican, okay? Basically across the board, okay? So, I mean, they don't like him as a person. Yeah, I get that. But is Trump really so bad for them? We haven't seen a Trump revolution. We really haven't. I mean, you can get deep and emotional like Kavanaugh or something like that, but in the big scheme of things, he still has, I guess up until like 2 weeks ago, he had a National Security Council infested by deep staters. Okay. I mean, where's really the threat here?
Yes.
You see my point?
Absolutely right. That's completely right. I mean, if Bernie Sanders were to become president and carry out all the things that he said he would do, which I don't believe he would, but that's another story. But if that would change America, that would change America in significant ways. Donald Trump hasn't changed America in anything like those ways, and he hasn't really impacted significantly.
Yeah, look, the tax cut was a gift to the rich. I mean,
Exactly.
Okay, from Sparky, $5 super chat. I drank Corona beer in a Chinese restaurant. Am I doomed? Should I get my affairs together?
Well, I'm sure that you will have enjoyed your beer and that you have a long and happy
A Corona
life.
beer.
Well, I hope you have you've stocked up on Corona toilet paper. Okay.
Well, indeed.
All right. From Patricia Klein, a 10-pound super chat. I don't think it's crazy to correlate to this virus getting loose with pliable and corrupt and Biden's rise. I never underestimate the deep state. They will do anything to retain their gravy trains.
Okay, we'll just repeat. We just answered that question, okay? In my heart of hearts, yeah, they do this kind of stuff. Yeah, they would. Do we have the evidence they've done it? No, at least I don't see it there.
Yeah.
From Sparky, $2 super chat. People buying prepper goods stimulates the economy. So those toilet paper fights in Australia and Sydney.
I mean, marginally. I mean, how much toilet paper do you need to produce and buy?
Everyone is buying a lot. That's for sure.
Yeah, but to change GDP, come on, you guys.
I don't know.
Buy a lot of toilet
They're
paper.
cleaning out the shelves everywhere. All right, from Sparky. For how many has the common cold been the coup de grace? Novel coronavirus is an uncommon cold destined to become a common cold.
It's a good point, actually. And I have to say this. I mean, one of the facts that I've seen this with members of my family, people who are old. If they get the common cold or they get flu, then it's very bad news for them. It can be very, it can have very, very bad effects on their health and on their longevity. How much difference does the coronavirus make? I'm not sure. I am not an expert in these things. We are led to think that it's making a big difference. But how can I say?
How can we say?
No.
From Sparky, $5 super chat. Spanish flu did not originate in Spain. The word was spread via Spanish newspapers since they weren't censored because Spain wasn't in World War I.
That is quite true. And in fact, there's a view that it actually originated in Kansas. But who knows? Again,
I mean, yeah, there is a theory. There is a theory that it's American troops that brought it to Europe, but that's one history that has been claimed.
From Sparky, $2 super chat. The Hong Kong flu was pretty bad, 1950s.
Absolutely, absolutely, sir. My mother had it, and she had a terrible time.
Interesting. Sparky, $2 super chat. Skripals can go to any of the Five Eyes countries.
One would think so. One would assume so, but apparently they haven't. And again, why haven't they? If that story in the Daily Mail is true, and of course I've no way of knowing how true or not it is.
All right, from Sparky again. Erdogan and MBS are left with no one but each other.
Can I just say
they're both toast. That's my feeling on it. They're both toast.
And they loathe and detest each other.
Yeah.
And I would add, and given what a volatile and unpredictable and vain individual MBS is, that I would not be surprised. In fact, I've said in a video recently that one of the reasons why MBS has gone nuts over the oil price in this bizarre way is because he's been jealous of the amount of attention Erdogan has been getting, especially from the trip that Erdogan got to Moscow. And I can just imagine, this vain and cocksure young man getting really angry over all of that. But no, I think that MBS.
Don't you know who I am? Don't you know who I am?
Well, indeed, I said it reminds me of a small teenager smashing the furniture to get the adults' attention. I mean, that's what it looks like to me. But can I just say, I think that MBS, I don't see any good outcome here. I think this is so erratic and unpredictable that it's not going to end well. Of that, I am sure. Erdogan, he does have a genuine base of support in Turkey. He knows how to keep his supporters mobilized. And he has actually, I mean, the first period of his time in Turkey, his rule in Turkey, was actually quite successful. So he's got a core of support in Turkey. I wouldn't count him out quite yet.
Okay, from Fabutabi, $5 super chat. Once you get 4 different flus, the 5th one's free. Coronavirus flu. 4 for 1. Thank you for that super chat. Paul Asphalt, $10 super chat. Thank you, Paul. And another super chat from Paul, $10. Could you comment on the fact that common influenza takes 61,000 US lives each year? Why the panic with COVID?
Well, so many people have made that point, and it's a completely valid one. I've made that point in the past. It's a completely valid one. You have to assume that the coronavirus, if it does gain hold and becomes a pandemic, is going to kill many more people, and that it's much more infectious and far more dangerous. And the only reason that we haven't had so many deaths as a result of it is because there's far fewer people infected than are infected by influenza. We will see. The trouble is, we won't really know unless there is a pandemic.
Yeah.
That's what makes this so difficult. We need to get 50 to 60% of the populations infected to be able to make these comparisons.
Yeah, but we don't have a. We may not get a pandemic, but we got a lot of panic. That's the whole.
That's the trouble
about it.
Yeah.
Peter from Sparky, get word to President Trump to loan Tulsi his primary voters. Helps Tulsi and Trump will enjoy messaging with the DNC. They can vote for Trump in the general.
Wow.
So Trump voters to Tulsi, Tulsi wins it, and there you go. Interesting plan.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm not sure how to react to that, but we all lament how Tulsi has been treated.
yes.
And again, going back to the relative value and promise of democracy, I mean, she was shortchanged for sure. Okay, such a brave person. I have so much admiration for her.
Donald Trump has done absolutely nothing to help Tulsi. He's not really spoken about her or tweeted about her in any conceivable way.
She's a threat to him.
Exactly. That's exactly the point I was going to make. He doesn't want to lend her any voters because he doesn't want her to start gaining momentum, even at this late stage.
One sec. Got some trolls here that I have to remove. From Brando Commando, what's going on with the U.S.-Brazil relations? Have you heard about that? Expelling the Venezuelan ambassador?
Yeah,
diplomats.
This is Brazil. We're talking about Brazil.
Yes.
Yeah,
Bolsonaro.
Bolsonaro and Trump get on fairly well, but I think that overall, Trump has more important things to worry about than with the election. And things have not been so good with Bolsonaro recently. I mean, apparently he's had many problems in his government, and given what an erratic individual he is, it doesn't surprise me either. So,
and Brazil-Chinese relations are going nice and smooth.
Indeed. So Brazil is one of these countries that you always expect it to do something big and important, and never seems to quite happen. And I think this has been true. It even was true under Lula. With Lula, they did make some big moves internationally. With Bolsonaro, it hasn't really worked out that way.
Okay, from Paul Ashbolt, Putin can't leave until this phase of history plays out.
Well, there are a lot of people around the world and many people in Russia who say that. My own view is he wants to leave, but we've discussed this in the program. I think that he doesn't want to make it absolutely clear at this point that that's his intention. But if you read him carefully and listen to what he says very carefully, I do get distinctly the impression that he's intending to leave. He's made, by the way, a series of long interviews, 20 questions with Vladimir Putin, which you can see on TASS, the official Russian news agency. And they also have something of a valedictory quality, or so they seem to me.
Okay, from Paul Ashbolt, $5 super chat. Love your work, guys. Very important. Much gratitude. Thank you, Paul, for that. Indigo Jones, $10 super chat. Why are vulnerable and large concentrations of homeless not affected by Corona? New York City, big shelter population. San Francisco and Seattle, street people sharing needles. Migrants in Italy. Anyone else suspicious? Question.
Well, Washington State is the epicenter in the United States, and New York. The mayor of New York, or the governor of New York, Cuomo, he's putting some transportation on lockdown, if I understand. So they're worried about homelessness. Okay, yeah, absolutely.
Yes, absolutely. We are still at an early stage of this pandemic. I mean, apparently. Well, that's a very good point, actually, Peter, because we don't know how it's going to pan out. We will know around April, May. We will have a better idea and we're in a stronger position to answer these sort of questions.
Okay, we have a new member, BA, new member to Duran. Thank you very much, BA. Youngblood, new member. Thank you very much, Youngblood. Skank Hunt 42. Thank you very much. Skank Hunt 42. From Sparky, Trump versus Hillary Clinton rematch, but HRC's no Muhammad Ali. No,
well, true.
Hillary's a spent force, let's face it. Okay, really.
From BA, $5 super chat. UK Labour leadership race updates. Can Lisa Nandy win against Keir Starmer, Blair, or Rebecca Long Bailey, Corbyn? Any chance of a podcast on this?
We should do a podcast on this.
You too.
Yeah, briefly, Lisa Nandy's not going to win the Labour leadership election. It would be a surprise at the moment if Keir Starmer didn't win. For what it's worth, I don't think he's the right person for Labour at this time. I think that there are many reasons why he's the obvious safe candidate, but I don't think he's the kind of person to pull Labour around. But, we'll discuss this undoubtedly in a program. But Lisa Nandy's not going to win the election.
Okay. From Sparky, Pompeo tricked Trump into killing Soleimani. This may give the establishment leverage over Trump. It could put him in a club with Cheney, W, and Obama.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah,
I don't think so.
I mean, we discussed.
I mean, all those guys in the club, they've never held accountable. So why would Trump be held accountable?
Yeah, we've discussed this. I mean, I think that Trump actually managed to get out of this crisis with Iran quite skillfully in January. I mean, I think he was maneuvered into killing Soleimani. And there was a moment, a very tense moment, when it did look as if it might escalate into a war with Iran. But he acted through the Swiss and very effectively, and the whole situation was de-escalated. And I don't think it's a problem for him.
Okay, from Brando Commando, $10 super chat. UK foreign minister said if US reduces its influence, Britain will have to step up to protect the post-Westphalian liberal world order they created. Do you think they would do it? If not, who? France?
Is this a joke?
Well, it is a joke, Peter. I mean, it is. Believe it or not, actually, Peter, there are people in Britain who are deluded enough to talk like that, as if, Victoria was still Queen and Empress and the Royal Navy still ruled the waves. We are not in any kind of position to do anything like that. The idea that Britain could take on Russia is just absurd. The idea that it could take on China is even more absurd. The idea that it could take on Russia and China together is completely delusional. And the idea that it can do so effectively in alliance with France is equally delusional. It is the United States which is the superpower. Britain is not.
Okay, from Taint Tostada, $5 super chat. Speak for yourselves. We are not progressive, and we perfectly understand what a gulag is. Okay. Thank you for that super chat. From Paul Ashbot, $5 super chat.
We also know what a gulag is. So I'm not quite sure what the point is being made.
From Paul Ashbot, $5 super chat. The United States is a corporation run by maritime law, and there is no room for someone like Bernie on that type of ship.
Well, I come back to what I said. I don't think the American political elite has any space for Bernie. And they have shown successfully in this election that they're able to control the way the nominations go. If Bernie Sanders had been prepared to rip up the rule book and make a real fight as the revolutionary leader he claims to be, then I think he might have got some traction. But he wasn't prepared to do it this time, and he didn't do it in 2016.
Okay, Trump reflects his base, and base reflects Trump. But see, the base for Bernie, they are revolutionaries, but Bernie is not their revolutionary leader. It's a mismatch. And with Trump and his base, it's a perfect match.
From Sparky, as a mile runner, Bernie slowed down to cross the finish line with his teammate rather than chasing a better time. This doesn't work in politics.
Correct. Absolutely right.
Sparky, $2 super chat. Are Duran bobblehead dolls still in the works? Yes, we're looking into that actually, but it's harder than you think. From Toilet Sauce, €5 super chat. Maybe you should not call a new member Duraner, but Socius Duranus or something Latin is not my strong suit. Just a suggestion. Okay. Take a look at that. It's a thought. Yeah. Thank you very much for that super chat. Toilet Sauce from Valley S. Peter, please remind us of your fur babies' names.
Robbie, Skippy, and Buddy. Robbie, Skippy, and Buddy.
Robbie, Skippy, Buddy. Thank you very much, Valley S, for that super chat. John Bramwell, $3.99 super chat. Thank you very much. John from Reality Check, $1.99 super chat. Alex Christopher, when are you getting a dog? I've had many dogs in my life, but No, not yet. Not anymore. From John Bromwell, I've had tea in my Duran magic mug. Pretty sure I'm now immunized.
Well done.
Well,
So
you can't make that claim that the mugs do that, but hey, maybe.
Well, they do give you some strength and sustenance. Russian caravan tea today, by the way.
All right. From Brian Barton, $5 super chat. My Ukrainian wife and I love the program. George Washington is a hero in the United States. Will Putin be seen as Russia's modern George Washington?
I think he'll be, well, yeah, he has, I think he has been the person who has made Russia into a distinct country. I mean, it's no longer just a successor state of the Soviet Union. It's no longer, it's now a country by itself. It's no longer post-Soviet Russia. It's Russia. And that does make him, in a sense, the first Russian, real Russian president.
Good point. Good point.
Yeah.
Peter, did you name one of your dogs after Robbie Mook?
Maybe after the fact, yeah, maybe. That's an insult to my dog. Please don't say it again.
All right, and the final super chat from Chris Morrell, a £2 super chat. Starmer is awful. He thinks Assange trial is fair.
Well, Starmer was the head of the Crown Prosecution Service, which worked with the Swedes to get Assange extradited to Sweden. And of course, there's been all sorts of leaks from the Crown Prosecution Service. They were encouraging the Swedes to persist in that extradition demand and not to meet with Assange in London when the Swedes were prepared to do so. So he doesn't have a good record on Assange, and that's putting it mildly.
All right, that's it for this live stream. JC Nell, moving to Moscow from Portland, Oregon. Any advice? What advice would you give someone, Peter, from Portland to Moscow?
Make sure your paperwork's in order and get a good job.
Easy.
It's not easy to get because they don't need foreigners.
No,
They just don't need foreigners. They came here. If you came here in '93, that'd be good.
Yeah.
2020,
Harder.
young people are bilingual. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it's tough. If you have a special skill, or if you write code, you can do it in Moscow. Perfect.
Yes.
But I'm very deadpan about these things. Okay. I mean, you can come, but it's tough. I know a lot of people that have come through in the last few years and they just couldn't find a niche. It's not because they didn't want to stay. It was very difficult for them to stay.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for this live stream. 2 hours. Geez, 2.5 hours.
What do you mean 2.5 hours?
Yeah, easy. Peter, what's going on for the rest of the week?
I'm doing the oil price tomorrow.
All right. Yeah. Alexander, how about yourself? What's going on?
Well, we have to see what MBS gets up to with the oil price. At the moment, actually, oil prices have been fairly stable since Monday, so we don't know. Look, Mishkin is coming to say hello. So there he is. Come on. There we go. Oh.
All right.
So we look at the oil. We look at the oil price. We look at what goes on in the election and what Bernie's going to do on Sunday.
Debate on Sunday, maybe.
Yeah.
All right. Peter Lavelle, host of RT's Crosstalk in Moscow. Thank you very much, Peter. Mishkin in London and Alexander in London. Yeah. Thank you very much, guys.
Hey, guys.
All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Take care. Have a great morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are in the world.
Yeah.